Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Morning.
At this time, I'd like to call the Nash County Board of Commissioners meeting for April the 3rd to order. It is customary for us to begin our meetings with a prayer by a sitting commissioner, and I pledge allegiance to the flag. During the prayer, you're welcome to stand and join us in that prayer. You're welcome to use this time as a prayer of your own, or you're welcome to use it, of course, as a moment of silence, whatever you have on your heart this morning. And at this time, I'd like to call on Commissioner Marvin Arrington for the invocation, and then Wayne Outlaw for the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Arrington.
Let us pray. We stand here today as believers in the power of God, and in God we trust. First, we want to thank you, God, for allowing all of us to arrive here safely today. We want to continue to thank you for our many blessings to our county and our citizens. We also want to recognize that it's you that provide us our moral standards, that we govern ourselves through our life and our businesses and our community. I pray for my fellow commissioners, our staff, and all the citizens of Nash County that we will continue to progress and make way for the future of our children, that they will have a better place than we have. We pray that you will continue to bless us as we make these decisions today. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Amen. Would you join us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioners. We are now on item number 4. It is approval of minutes for the month of March. During the month of March, we did have 5 meetings. Our regular meeting on March the 6th, our legislative dinner on March the 16th, a special called meeting on March the 20th, and a budget retreat meeting on the 28th and 29th of March. You have those minutes from each one of those 5 meetings. If there are any changes or corrections or additions at this time, I would be glad to take those into account, or if you are satisfied with all of them, I'd entertain a motion to approve them as submitted.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Outlaw, a second by Commissioner Belfield to approve the 5 minutes meeting minutes as submitted. Any questions on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Minutes stand approved, and thank you for your great work, Madam Clerk, as always. You get it right almost every time. Thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now on item number 5, which is a public comment period that we have at our first meeting each month of the month. At the first of each meeting that we have during each month. And during this time, you're welcome to come before the board and speak about anything you have on your mind. As we do ask that if it's an agenda item, public hearing item, that you wait until that item comes up on the agenda. And if it's just not on the agenda, you're welcome to bring anything before the board. It's not customary for us to take any action or comment during this time, but we routinely will assign it to the correct staff person or the manager and follow back up with you every time. Is what we like to do. I do have 6 people that signed up this morning, and I'll call them in the order that they signed up. First name I have on the sign-up sheet is a Jane Norwood. Ms. Norwood, if you're present, if you would come forward and state your name and address for the record, we'd be glad to hear from you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jane Norwood. I live at 3501 Woodlawn Road, Rocky Mount, North Carolina. The last time I was here was in January, and I was receiving my 30-year recognition for being a 30-year employee at the Department of Social Services. For all of that time, I have been in DSS, and I've served as a DSS attorney for a brief time in child support, and then Whenever we were between attorneys and child support, I filled in for that, but for the most part, I was the attorney for child welfare. And I did adult services and children's services. I'll tell you that I am way more nervous this morning than I've ever been in court. I think I got used to going to court, so it's pretty daunting to appear in front of the commissioners. I'm sure you're aware that the subject that I want to talk about is the death of Crystal Lane. And I just want to impress upon you that I don't think there is anyone at the Department of Social Services that would take her death lightly. It was a tragedy. When you're in the Department of Social Services and a child passes away, then you're not really in a position to say anything that would make it sound like you're trying to blame someone else or push aside, the fact that a child died under our watch while we were involved in an investigation. I would ask that, I know that everybody wants to, and also to say I'm in the same position y'all are. I left on December the 30th. I left without knowing the name Crystal Lane. I think the paper had, and all of the information that I have, unfortunately, I've gathered from news reports, social media. I think I'm a masochist because I've been on 252 Hood News. I've been on Fighting Crimes. I've read all of the newspaper reports. And so that's basically what, and the 4-page letter. I read the 4-page letter written by the state. And so I'm not here to make excuses. I'm just here to say, please be patient. Please give the department time to respond to the corrective action. I have seen some things that, in my experience, were somewhat barriers to maybe getting information as timely as we could. It's difficult to get. I saw that one of the things identified was that we did not obtain South Carolina records as early as we could have. And in my experience during the time we were there, other states are not that interested in hurrying up and getting you records. It takes a while. It takes a while to get records from other counties. Counties are busy, even though we have, it's easier to get them from other counties, but when you start dealing with another state, it's very difficult to get those records. I don't know how soon the records were asked for, but I am aware that we still don't have all of them, and it isn't because they haven't been asked for. I've looked at the 4-page letter from the Department of Health and Human Services, and I noticed that it did say that some of those things that the department already has in place. Since we went a long time without a program manager who was the supervisor of all of the supervisors for child welfare. So for a couple of years, Ms. Boone, when she was the director, she did not have a program manager. We didn't get that position back, so she served as deputy director and program manager, and then I think there was some period of time when she served as the director, and for a while she didn't have a deputy director, and we didn't have a program manager. We first got a program manager back to supervise over all of child welfare. I don't know how long Ms. Nicholson has been here, but it's only been less than 5 or 6 years, I think. We already had, we staff cases every Wednesday. So on Wednesday, the social workers who have an open case, they join together and they staff those cases. That's a time for the social workers to talk about things, to get advice and to gather information. And for as long as I can remember, both Shay Neal, the deputy director, and Kim Nicholson, the program manager, spent the most of their day on Wednesdays, every Wednesday, going over the cases that were likely to be substantiated or not substantiated. And I saw that that was one of the things that was in, with oversight, that was in there. So I do think that we were already doing some things to, that were good, and now we're left with a corrective action plan. But I know that Ms. Pridgeon, Ms. Neal, and Ms. Nicholson can navigate us through trying to comply with the corrective action plan. When I looked at it, it didn't look like there was anything on there that was undoable. I know the question may be, well, why wasn't it being done before? Honestly, some of the things that were on there were new to me, and I was the legal person, not the policy person, but when you're the attorney for the Department of Social Services, you feel sometimes like you're a social worker because you're down there with them so much trying to see what's going on. I was surprised about them in the other cases that they reviewed, talking about that we needed more follow-up. I'm not really sure what that meant, and I'm like I said, I'm not in on any conversations now to really talk about that, but I would like to know some more about that. I was surprised about, and I always had trouble when I was the attorney there. As a matter of fact, since that report came out, I called and asked, what difference does it make whether we take something as a new report or whether we treat it as additional information to a report that's already existing, because we're already in the home, we're already in there asking questions, and so if unless it's a totally new event, I understand if it's something more happens to the child, that of course it would be necessary to treat that like a new investigation. So I saw some things in there that were surprising to me. But I have all faith that this case has been taken seriously by the Department of Social Services, that they're already working on the plan, and I saw in the report the steps that had already been taken by the time the state did the audit. The one thing that I will say, and I don't know what the answer to this is that the whole time I was at Department of Social Services, no matter, I had 5 directors. I worked under 5 directors at the Department of Social Services. And having documentation in your record within 7 days, I think we've tried everything under the sun to figure out how to get documentation in the record within 7 days. Because it's not like they have one case at the time. They might have 10 or 15 cases. And we've tried having something called NEOs, where they took those out there with them, and they were taking documentation when they were at the home, so the documentation would already be done. And then we would hear about that is the worker didn't even look at me while she was out at my home. She was sitting there typing. Same thing with doing voice to text. That wasn't ideal. They've taken laptops, they've used their phones. We've tried any number of things. So I did see that it looked like there was another way to try to gather that, to have documentation within 7 days. I know that they say that that's what the state requires, and that that's a policy, and that we'll have to strive to reach that. But that one in particular, I haven't seen anything that works to do that, so we may need to work to do that more. But I guess mainly there's been so much negativity on social media about the department, and of course, some of that is expected, because in every case we're involved in, I can't think of anything that makes people more angry than someone telling them that they're not doing the best they can to raise their children. And just briefly, I'll say, I had a lot of family support when I got married. I had a mother and a mother-in-law, and even I didn't like it when they told me that I was not feeding my child appropriately, or that my child needed a better bath, or that he didn't have on a T-shirt when I took him out, and you're always supposed to have a T-shirt on whether it's hot or cold when you go out. So so imagine if the government is in there telling you that you have done something or that we're investigating something to say that you haven't raised your child or not doing the best you can to parent your child. The last thing that I'll say, because I know y'all don't want to hear all these points belabored, is one, as somebody who's worked with the department for 30 years, if you have any questions at any time, you are welcome to call me. Like I said, I don't work there anymore, but I know our agency's history, and I would be free at a time when y'all don't just have to sit there and listen. If you have any specific questions, I would invite you to contact me, and especially since I was an employee right up until December. And I just would ask for some patience in allowing the department to do what it needs to do now to address the corrective action and to show some support for the department, because it's an overwhelming responsibility, and I hope that we can earn back the trust of those people that don't trust us anymore. But I will say that there are people, both past and present employers, who do trust the Department of Social Services to guide us through this horrible incident. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. My next speaker is a Dennis Morgan. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. I'm Dennis Morgan, 516 Wendover Lane, Brattleboro, North Carolina. I'm here to speak about the DSS. Nash DSS was investigating our case last year involving our granddaughter. We had filed for temporary custody of our great-grandson as advised by DSS. They advised us to call Rick Hamlet to represent us. We received emergency custody in court. Linda Mathis, supervisor of DSS, first testified it would be the best interest of the child to leave him with us, the great-grandparents. Then, when asked if there was any reason he could not return to his mother and her mother's home, she replied no. This is the same person, same agency that advised us to obtain Rick Hamlet and get temporary custody. Rick even told us to take the child out of town until the emergency custody order could be signed by a judge. When the temporary custody trial happened, the judge awarded temporary custody to the mother and grandmother, putting the child back in the home. This is the same home where we rescued our granddaughter and great-grandson many times. The child is back in the home with dangerous situations for a curious and very active 3-year-old. And about a week after the court case, DSS closed the case. No more required drug tests, which were all previously failed. This was noted in court. No more mental health therapy required for our granddaughter. Daycare was no longer encouraged for the child. We are now in a legal battle to get weekly visitation rights that were ordered by the court. We have been allowed to see him once since September the 7th, ruling which took place outside on a cold December day at an empty house. This is a heartbreaking family situation, but we feel like we were misled when we thought DSS was going to help us protect an innocent child. We worry about this well-being and pray for his safety every day.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Laura Bartholomew. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Laura Bartholomew, 8618 Rich Road, Castelia. Good morning, Commissioner. Good morning, Board. I'm also the Director of Faith Christian Ministries of Nash County, and I also hold a degree in social work. And I am basically here this morning on behalf of Crystal Nevaeh Lane. It's heartbreaking what happened to this little girl. And I'm here as a concerned citizen. I'm here just to speak on her behalf, because she's not here. Listening to the First Lady speak this morning, I don't work in Child Protective Services, but I do hold a degree of social work, and I know what should have happened. And the agency failed Crystal. This should never have happened. Hearing her speak this morning, there was a lot of talking done with the social workers and not much action that was taken. And that should not have ever happened. This was the worst case that ever could have happened to a child. We cannot fail Crystal. We cannot fail her. We cannot fail her siblings. We owe her, this 8-year-old little girl, we owe her something. Let's not let her life be in vain. Let's not let her death be in vain. I just want to speak from my heart this morning. That's why I'm here. I never met this little girl, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. It breaks my heart to know that people saw her. Students saw her, teachers saw her, social workers saw her, but she's not here anymore. So I just felt in my heart, as a mother, as a Nash County resident, as part of this community, to stand before you and bring her picture that I've had sitting in our counter at Faith Christian Ministries so that we won't forget her. We haven't heard much about Crystal, but I refuse to let her name just fade away. And that's why I'm here today, just to speak to you. Commissioner, I want to support you in anything that I can do, and hopefully there will be some change. Hopefully there will be some corrective action done immediately. She's been gone since February. This is April. And I just pray, I heard that there were some things called Crystal's Law. Maybe something's going to change for future children, that this could hopefully never happen to, but we live in a world where there's evil. We all know that. And I just pray that something will be done immediately so this doesn't happen again. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Amelia Harper.
Hello, I'm Amelia Harper. I think I'm known to many of you. 2311 Nashville, Harrison Road, Nashville, North Carolina, so I am a Nash County resident. I wanted to speak to you today. I am currently serving as the Community Development Director for the Salvation Army, so I'm speaking on a totally different topic. I just wanted to thank you guys because last year y'all had a nonprofit pandemic relief funding program. You used the American Rescue Plan Act funds for this. My understanding is y'all had like $525,000 of funds that you chose to disperse specifically for nonprofits. And not every community did that, not every county did that, not every city did that. And I really appreciate y'all taking the time to consider the needs of nonprofits in your community. We received $20,000 of that grant, and we're very grateful for it. It helped us to be able to recover from some of the effects that happened during COVID. And I just wanted to thank y'all as a board for considering that nonprofits play a big role in our community. And we don't always see it, and there are some that have bigger impacts than others. But I know that everyone that did receive funds is grateful for your assistance. The Salvation Army helps the community in many ways. We're part of the local emergency planning commission. I'm not sure if you're aware, but if there are things that go on in the community that require shelter activity, the American Red Cross normally provides the shelters, but we provide the food for the shelters. So we are an important part of that in crisis times, and we're willing to do anything else we need to do to help the county in times of crisis. We also provide help to hundreds of Nash County citizens, Edgecombe County and Wilson County citizens in the form of rental assistance, food assistance, utilities assistance, and so we stand there every day also to help with individual crisis situations like victims of fires. We help provide food and furniture and things like that. So we do help the community in many ways. We have a senior program. We have a literacy program that works with some of the schools in Nash County. And so we're doing everything we can to positively impact the community. During the QVC fire after that, we were the ones primarily responsible for dispersing all of those funds because we have a social worker on staff who's qualified to help determine needs and disperse those funds. So I just want to thank y'all for helping us make all that possible and for your wisdom in helping the nonprofit community in this way. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good to see you again. Our next speaker is Lee Robertson. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. My name is Lee Robertson. I currently reside at 7641 Lee Sharon Road. That's in Brattleboro. My wife and I are in the process of planning a house to be built in Castalia, North Carolina, specifically off Wildlife Road, which borders the proposed solar farm by Skylight Solar, or NextEra Energy, or NextEra Resources, whichever company you want to call them.
Let me get you to pause right there just a minute. Are you speaking on the solar farm that's here
I am.
before us today?
As I was understood, I was supposed to speak later, but since you called me.
Well, I called you because you signed up on the list, but I understand. Let's let that stay until the public hearing.
Sure.
Would be the proper place to do that. I'm sorry you misunderstood that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My next speaker is Joanna Powell. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Jawana Powell, 665 Hunters Road, Nashville, North Carolina. And I apologize for my voice. It's my allergies. This morning, I am here to speak on behalf of the following, the young little Crystal Lane. And I'm going to say her name 2 more times. Crystal Lane. Crystal Lane. She is not here to speak for herself. And as military veterans speak of fallen veteran names 3 times because they was killed during a time of war. Yes, she is not a soldier, but she lived in a constant war zone. And DSS knew of this and did nothing. The school saw that she came there with marks on her. They took actions as much as they could. But yet it's still, Crystal Lane is not here. Because the ball was dropped. And yes, it was dropped indeed. We can't bring her back. But from this day forth, we need to know that any child that is under investigation through DSS is held at a high standard. We're not sweeping anyone under the rug. Everything is taken seriously, whether the school calls it in, a neighbor, a concerned grandparent, and so on. It should be taken seriously. One child killed is one child too many. It's just, I have seen things that people have read about that would make them pass out. But to hear about this, it took my breath away. It knocked me down. Someone had to pick me up when I heard about this. I couldn't believe it. And as more things come out, I'm still in shock and awe that this child and her siblings was not removed from their home. Moving forward, I pray, like I said, that every child that's under investigation is taken seriously. That the siblings aren't forgot about and aren't held to be quiet and swept under the rug, aren't to be rushed out of the state of North Carolina because North Carolina does not want to be held accountable for what has happened. I think that those children has endured enough because I'm pretty sure some of them have witnessed their sister being murdered. It would be a complete travesty for them to be rushed off and pushed somewhere as if no one cares for them. If they're currently in a loving home, I suggest that they stay there until whoever is trying to get them back can prove that they are deemed fit to do so. I thank you all for taking the time to listen to me this morning.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. That is the people that I had that signed up. If you happen to be here and you did come wishing to speak to the commissioners and didn't realize you needed to sign up, we're pretty lenient about that, wanting to hear from our citizens. So is there anyone else here that wish to speak on an item not on the agenda? Seeing no movement, we will close that.
Lady back here, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Pam?
Did I have someone? Yes. Okay. Sorry I missed it. If you will state your name and address for the record. Good morning.
Hey, my name is Debbie Cook. I live at 2345 South Old Franklin Road, Nashville, North Carolina. I have written a letter to all of you just recently. The one thing I did not address, and the thing that it lays on my heart so very heavy, being not in social services anymore. I am a 30-year retiree. I was a social worker in adult and children's services, and I was a supervisor for Child Protective Services for about 11 years. Not being there anymore, there's a lot I cannot say. The one thing that I want to ask that the media work on and correct, I don't know if anyone is here from the media today, I assume there probably is. From what I have seen on TV and read, the word, the child was unrecognizable, and it appears to indicate that Crystal Lane, as tragic as this is, it is tragic, and I in no way want to dismiss that. There was, from what I understand, a report in December, and then the child passed away at a later time. The media is indicating and saying that the child's condition, that Crystal was unrecognizable, is indicating at the time of the report and the social worker's first contact in December. I am very concerned because this, not only the child's death being such a horrible situation, but I am very concerned that her condition may have been confused at the time of her death. Of course, bless her heart, I'm sure she was unrecognizable. But when she went out, when the worker first went out on the December report, if she had been unrecognizable at that time, would it not seem reasonable that the school would have called for medical assistance? If the juvenile detective did go out with the social worker, as I believe was indicated on the news, no charges were brought, no speak about arrest. So I have grave concern that her condition was unrecognizable in December. I just can't fathom that that would be the case. I do believe that there has been miscommunication, that her condition was caused at the time of her death. Yes, I believe that obviously she was unrecognizable. But it is very hard for me to believe on that date, if she was unrecognizable at the first intervention, that not only social services failed, but the school and the sheriff's department, and I just find it really hard. I believe that her condition has gotten confused between the two times that the media is talking about. Of course, they made, visits all in between, interviewing the children, and the public often, their thinking does not coincide with what our juvenile law states and the policy of social services. A mark on a child in itself is not abuse. You have many levels of neglect and abuse. And if there is a mark, it may not rise to the level of abuse. It can be inappropriate discipline, it can be an environment injurious to their welfare. There's so many things that the law says and DSS policy says that is in conflict with the public's opinion. I'm not trying to excuse social services by any means, obviously. There have been mistakes. There may have been mistakes in this report, I don't know. But the state is saying, yes, there have been many things that need to be corrected. All I am saying, the biggest uprising in the county and probably the state is the statement that says, when the social worker went out, the school said she was severely beaten, and then in the news, it is saying she was unrecognizable. So how could you not remove a child who was her condition was unrecognizable? Someone living under a bridge would know that that has to be taken care of. So I believe in my heart that she was unrecognizable at the time of her death, but hopefully, and common sense would tell you that she wasn't in that condition on the first. And I think that I believe, has misled the public in saying that. Because if she was in that condition on that day, other people would have responded differently, and yeah, we'd be in a different place today.
She said her grandmother beat her for not putting lotion on. She said that on December 19th. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to call you out of order.
And then there's a definition, was she spanked? Was she beaten? Many times we use the term beaten for spanking. I don't know what condition she was in.
Speak to the whole board if you would.
Okay. I don't know what condition she was in there, because I'm not there anymore. You're not there anymore. But I know social services cannot tell you the specifics due to confidentiality to protect. They can't tell you what was in that report. They can't tell you, they can't show pictures if there were pictures, unless things have changed since I've left the agency. So all I'm saying is my wish is that piece to be straightened out, because I think that has what has caused the major disgust with social services. And if that's the case, that is warranted. If that is not the case, decisions cannot be made on what is reported in the news, because we know they are humans, you guys are humans, I'm sure you make mistakes. Mistakes have been made at social services, but social services cannot defend itself. And there are a lot of things that we don't know because the news, unfortunately, is not there either. They don't always have the details. They don't know the specifics, and social services cannot give that to you. Unfortunately, I wish that they could. Sounds like the ball was dropped in this. I don't deny that, but I have real concerns as to whether she was unrecognizable on the worker's first visit, and I wish that to be straightened out by the media. Whoever can tell, maybe the Sheriff's Department can. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to move on to item number, yes.
One more.
Do you wish to speak on an item not otherwise on the agenda?
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead, sir.
Good morning, County Commissioners. My name is Robert Cordell, and I live at 3300 Brookview Drive, right here in Rocky Mount, better known as the City on the Rise and the center of it all. And I want to leave the public comments on a positive note. This is my fourth time visiting and attending y'all meetings, and I must say that I am very much highly impressed with you all, how you handle the proceedings. I admire how you are not beholden to a speaker's 3 minutes, like the Rocky Mount City Council and, of course, the Nash County School Board. I really admire that. And maybe at some point, you would consider having your meetings at 4 in the evening that would allow working people to attend some of your meetings. And again, being very positive, I'd like to leave on a positive note that you're doing a very superb job and keep up the good works.
Thank you, Mr. Cordell.
All right.
Anyone else wishes to speak under public comment? Morning, Ms. Boone. If you will state your name and address for the record.
Donna Boone, 206 East Elm Street, Nashville, North Carolina. As many have spoken already this morning, my heart is burdened by the tragedy of the death of this child, and nothing can change that. I do, as a 35-year employee of Nash County, retired 5 years ago, I served as deputy director for 5 years and director for my last 3 years. And Ms. Hamlet was under my supervision for a substantial number of her years in the agency, and have known Ms. Neal for her entire career as well. And just want to speak to their, and Ms. Nicholson was coming in as I left 5 years ago, and want to speak to my utmost confidence in their ability to right the ship. They both have a tremendous amount of passion for the work they do. They work tirelessly and long hours to try to meet the needs of the citizens in the county. And I do understand that there are a tremendous amount of serious reports coming in that take a great deal of time, effort, and energy on the social worker's part, and would implore you all to, if anything, to maybe consider adding additional social work staff and child protective services to help them be able to spend all the time they need with each child in each case, and to try to make sure that we adequately serve those children properly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Boone. Others wishing to speak? Seeing no movement, I will close that portion out, item number 5, and we will move to item number 6, which is the Trillium Health Resource Annual Report. And with us today, we have Dave Peterson to make that presentation. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having me here today. Is the presentation up? Thank you. One, I want to thank Commissioner Cohn for serving on our Regional Advisory Board. And so every year I've been coming to you all with this presentation. And so, next slide. Or do I have the... where?
Oh. Thank you. I'm so sorry.
No worries, no worries. Okay, so I'll just go quickly through this. Our mission is transforming lives and building community well-being through partnership and proven solutions. I'm going to hit on who we are. I'm going to probably spend the most time on the Medicaid transformation that's been occurring, some of the organizational changes that are impacting because of the Medicaid transformation, and then on the last slide, hitting on some county data. Oops, that's not. Wait a minute. How do I? Oop. Okay. So, as you may know, we cover 28 counties. Just this past year, we added Halifax County and Bladen County. We serve about 1.5 million, or we cover about 1.5 million folks within those 28 counties. Last fiscal year, we served almost 46,000 individuals, and I'll talk a little bit about how that number has gone down because of the changes that the state has been making around the Medicaid. About 70% of the individuals that we serve have a primary diagnosis of mental health. About 20% have a substance use disorder, and about 10% have intellectual and developmental disabilities. We contract out with about 550 behavioral health and intellectual and developmental disability providers throughout our 28 counties. The budget for last year was almost $521 million. We do serve the smallest county in the state, Terrell County, and we also serve New Hanover, which is our largest county, and they're about 8th or 9th largest in the state. We cover over 13,000 square miles in our 28 counties. I always want to show kind of this map, and we're divided into regions. We have the northern region, which has 11 counties. And if you take a look at the total population of those 11 counties, it's 250,000 people. In the southern region, in the central region, which is my region, we cover Nash all the way out to Dare County. And that's 2 less counties, but it's twice the population of the northern region with about 500,000 folks. And then we do have our southern region, and Cecilia Piers is the Southern Regional Director, and she covers the 8 counties in the southern region. What's interesting about that, 3 less counties than the northern region, but if you take a look at the population of almost 800,000, primarily because of Jacksonville and Wilmington. So just to show some demographics of what we're looking like. So back in 2018, you all were just joining us right around that time. I started doing presentations on what the state was going to be doing with the Medicaid population. And they put a bid out for that for the low to moderate risk Medicaid behavioral health population. And these 5 agencies, AmeriHealth, Blue Cross, United, WellCare, and Carolina Complete Health, got that bid. And they started serving the low to moderate risk individuals in July of 2021. Those are individuals that we had been serving for many, many, many years. And so the state moved to having them served by private insurance companies. Yes, so those were called standard plans. We, Trillium, along with 5 other managed care organizations, are called tailored plans. We are local management entities. We are going to be fully operated as a tailored plan to continue to serve, like we've been doing for decades, people with severe mental health, developmental disabilities, and substance use. The original date that we were to go live was July 1, 2022, and then it got postponed to December 1, 2022, and then it got postponed to April 1, 2023, and now it got postponed again until October 1. There are data points that the MCOs are required, the local management entities are required to meet. Trillium has met those, okay? What the state is taking a look at is trying to make sure that all 6 MCOs are able to meet these requirements, and if one isn't ready, then the whole state gets delayed, okay? So the other piece of that is we did do a soft launch of care management on December 1st, 2022. So that did get started. Just to give you kind of the map of what we look like in the state now, though, the very light green is Trillium. And you can see the land mass that we cover. I always do say this, though. If you take a look at the purple, which is Alliance, if you just take Alliance area and you just take Wake County and Cumberland County, just those two counties, their total population is more than all 28 of our counties together. Okay? They manage folks differently than we do. We have mobile clinics, and we have one here in Nash County. You don't necessarily need a mobile clinic in Wake County. All right? So we have to be a little bit more creative on how we reach folks. So one of the things I did say that we started the care management on December 1st, 2022. The other piece of this big change that's happened is we have the expertise for decades on how to serve mental health, developmental disabilities, and substance use. But what we have been needing to learn is now we're going to be serving the whole person, not just their behavioral health, but also their physical health. If they have asthma or seizure disorder, those are areas that we had not managed in previous decades. So now we are going to be serving the whole person. What that means is the state is asking us to have a contract with every single pharmacy in all 28 counties. So your pharmacy that you get your meds from, we have to have a contract with them, okay? So we're working on getting all the pharmacy benefits in there to make sure that folks that when they're going for their medication can get it easily. So that's about 2,000 pharmacies. We also, because we're now going to be serving the whole person, having to contract with every single physical health doctor's office that serves those with Medicaid. And so that's a big lift on our part to make sure we're getting those contracts in place. So some of the organizational changes that have developed because of this, the system of care staff has been moved over to care management, but we did hire community liaison coordinators. And so those are the folks that are out in each of our counties. Care management, like I was saying, does not just manage the mental health side. They also now have to manage the physical health side of that person. We have been asked by the state to contract with one of the other standard plans, and we have contracted with Carolina Complete Health to help us with getting our contracts with the hospitals and all the primary care offices. So they are working on that also. We have a lot of question and answers on our website, and there's a link to that on this slide. Some of the other organizational changes, one of the requirements that the state has had us do is set up, we've always had a call center, always. Well, now they want us to have certain lines for different parties. So we now are developing a pharmacy line because we have to contract with all those pharmacies. We also have a provider line just to make sure that providers get their needs met. Because we're now dealing with the physical health side starting in October, we have to have a nurse line. And then, like always, a member recipient line and a behavioral health crisis line. We have licensed clinicians 24/7, 365 overseeing services in a behavioral health crisis line. Like I said, care management is now dealing with the whole person. And in order to do that, we've set up some specialty teams. We have an emergency department disposition team that connects with every emergency department on a daily basis. Okay? We have over 20 hospitals that we have to do that with, UNC Nash being one of them. We also have set up a Department of Juvenile Justice Care Management team. And working with the state, we also have a Rapid Access to Care Coordination team. So some of the projects, as everybody knows, the opioid settlement has hit the United States very hard. The state did allocate, obviously, to all the counties. They also did allocate some funds to the local management entities. And we have done 2 rounds of RFPs that have gone out, and a couple of agencies in Nash County have applied for those, and they were awarded those funds. So Nash County did benefit also, not only from the feds giving, or the state giving you all some opioid settlement funds, but also Trillium has given a couple agencies in Nash County some funds also. We continue to distribute Narcan kits or naloxone kits. We're getting ready to purchase some more for that. The mobile clinics have gotten started, and it is in Nash County. That clinic rotates in between 4 other counties, and so I think it's in Nash County either once a week or once every 2 weeks. So it is in this area. And we did the ribbon cutting a while back on that one, so it's taken some time to get that started. We have been doing a lot of work with some tribal engagement because we want to make sure that any of the folks that are in any of the tribes are receiving services also, so we're working hard on that. We do have some co-responder pilots, and just so that you know, your sheriff's department has done that for about 2 years. We have most recently met with the Rocky Mount Police Department, and that has started, I think, on March 1st. So Rocky Mount Police Department is also using a co-responder pilot where they have someone in the building that has a mental health background and can go out on calls with the Rocky Mount Police Department. Okay. We do have Consumer Family Advisory Committee, CFAC. The state has added, we had the 3 disability groups, mental health, developmental disabilities, and substance use. The state has added a 4th population, which is traumatic brain injury. So now we have added traumatic brain injury representatives to our CFACs. One of the big pieces of news, and we've been working on this for 8 years, but the grand opening from a 200-bed substance abuse facility down in New Hanover County, 100 for men, 100 for women. There was a soft opening, but there's going to be a big grand opening in May, I think May 11th, where we're going to be making sure that folks are aware that this substance abuse recovery facility is known to folks. If you may have heard, there's been one in Raleigh since 1991. And so we've helped try to get this one established in our catchment area. So the healing place is going to be opening, well, it's open now. And actually, within the first month, there was about 75 individuals already in the door. Okay. So lastly, Nash County data, and I give this every year to y'all. We served 2,374 individuals. And then the breakout of that was 1,755 with a primary diagnosis of mental health, 588 with a primary diagnosis of substance use, and 400 with the primary diagnosis of intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I always say, don't try to add the numbers up, because some of those folks are duly diagnosed with mental health and substance use. So I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments from the commissioner at this time?
Mr. Chairman, would you explain
Commissioner.
Tribal engagement.
So one of the things with this new tailored plan, very good question, Commissioner. So each of the managed care organization, local management entity needs to have a tribal liaison now, which is in our contract. And guess who that is? Me. I'm excited about that. I've been doing this 40 years and I get a new kind of venture. So we're meeting with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians and the other tribes. We were, Cecilia and I were down meeting with the chairman of the Lumbee tribe just to see what their needs are, to see how, if we aren't reaching them, how we can better reach them. Because that has not been under our purview ever. And so I'm really excited about moving forward with trying to build those relationships. Yep.
Other questions, Commissioner Wilkins? Commissioner Aaron?
Yeah. When it comes to the opioid substance abuse, do you have to be a recipient of Medicaid in order to receive that service?
Can you say the first part of that question? Do you have to be?
A recipient of Medicaid in order to receive the service of opioid abuse?
So, no. So when we put out our RFP, it was to any business, and I mean any business. It didn't have to be a business that we contracted with for Medicaid. So any business could get that fund to then help individuals that were addicted. So no, they did not have to be Medicaid individuals to receive support for that.
All right. Mr. Belfield?
I see here you have 2,000 pharmaceutical. Can the individual person select the pharmacy that they want to get their medication from?
Commissioner, yes. Wherever the individual is getting their medication now, we will have a contract with that pharmacy. So, yes, just like you and I select where we go for our pharmacy, individuals can do that same thing.
So it really doesn't matter who they pick. It may be somebody that you don't have a contract with.
We're trying to get contracts with every single pharmacy, yes.
Okay.
Yep, every single pharmacy.
But that's
good question.
That's where I'm going.
Yep, good question.
Other questions, comments? Mr. Peterson, the healing place in New Hanover County, I've had a little bit of dealings with the one in Wake County, and they seem to give first priority to Wake County citizens. Not real pronounced about that, but if you really interpolate what they tell you, that's the case. Do you expect the same thing with this one, or do y'all have enough input into it where it's for our total area?
Good question, Commissioner Davis. So, yes, we have enough input into that because we're the ones managing the contract with the healing place. Now, let me make sure that folks are aware. So the healing place is not the same company as the one in Raleigh. Okay, it's a different company. We use the original agency from Kentucky to come in, and that's where this originated from. And so we are using that company to manage it, yes.
Thank you. My second question is, I think each commissioner, I know I did, in the last few days have gotten a rather, I thought, curse letter from the secretary concerning foster care. Could you let us know exactly what's going on there? Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, we saw the letter over the weekend, and so I have not had the ability to talk directly to our CEO about how we're going to respond to that. I will say that the 6 local management entities have been working together to address the foster care system. And we are adamant about trying to make sure that kids and families are receiving the best services out there. Are there things that some local management entities do differently than others in the state? Yes. One of the things that we know that we are going to be trying to do is, let's just say we have, and I'll just don't quote me on the number, let's just say we have 10 agencies that do foster care in eastern North Carolina. And then the local management entity in the western part has 10 agencies that they do foster care, but they're not exactly the same. Some of them are statewide, and I use Easter Seals is a statewide agency. Well, we want to contract with all the ones in the western part of the state, just in case an individual needs to find a place to stay that evening, okay? And on another note, you may have heard me over the past couple of years, we did hire Sean Kenny, and Sean Kenny is our DSS liaison, so he is an employee to us, and he comes directly from Pitt County DSS with that history. So we have that experience within our agency.
On your pharmacists that you'll be entering contracts with, will they include mail order out-of-state pharmacies as well? Because I know a lot of our citizens use that service.
I am going to have to take that question back, Commissioner.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes, I will make sure that I get that to you.
Okay. Then my last question is, at our legislative dinner, we were asked to bring an item before our General Assembly members that represent Nash County, and it seemed to be, when we got there and asked the question, it seemed to be a little bit different than what I thought at the time we were asking the question. Can you explain what that ask was and where we are with that? Because our House member didn't buy into it too quickly, but Manager, if you can help us, we'll help you explain it.
It's related to the letter, actually, and about the foster care, the legislation where the state is trying to have a statewide system.
Right, right. And I thought, okay.
It's all related.
Yes, it's the same as what I answered earlier.
Okay.
They're looking at a statewide foster care plan.
Right, I realize that.
And the Senate, I believe, has passed that, and the House has not yet. That's my
and our ask was for our House to support it, but it didn't get too far.
Our ask was for it to stay with our local MCOs and for us to continue to do business directly with Trillium for our foster care.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you are aware of all of that?
Yes, very aware.
Okay.
Yes.
Might not have been fair to ask you that, but thank you, sir. Any other questions?
Thank you for coming, Dave.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. We certainly appreciate the job you do for Nash County.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
If I could just interrupt for just a moment, and before we get too far on the agenda, do you mind asking the board if we can add this to the...
I got that noted. I just overlooked it when I started. I do have one item that was asked to be added to the agenda. I'm going to ask that to be put as 17A. It is a matter of resolution declaring real property surplus at 406 Bill Street. And if you could just add it as 17A. Any objection to me adding that to the agenda at this time? It's something that Vince has brought to us in conjunction with the city of Rocky Mount. Seeing none, we'll get to that at 17A. I put it last because it only involves staff, and we'll get through as many of these public hearings as we can before we take up other items. Thank you, Madam Manager, for reminding me of that. Next item is a public hearing. Our first public hearing of today. It is a public hearing on conditional rezoning request CZ 230301, which is the Harris Farm subdivision. It is located in Commissioner Leggett's district, and I'll call on Adam Tyson at this time to bring this to the board. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. This is the
first of two conditional rezoning public hearings we're going to have this morning. Before I get started, I want to briefly introduce the board to our new senior planner, Aaron Chalker. Aaron, if you'll stand. Aaron replaces Mr. Adam Culpepper, who departed Nash County in February for another position. Today marks the beginning of Aaron's second week with Nash County. He comes to us from the Town of Zebulon Planning Department, and prior to that, he worked with the Wilson County Development Services Department, so he's very familiar with county planning. He was already a resident of Nash County, but we are certainly glad to have him working in the community where he lives now. So I wanted to welcome him and introduce him to the board.
Thank you, sir.
On your screen is the subject property for the first conditional rezoning on your agenda this morning. This is approximately 14.33 acres of undeveloped land owned by Walter M. Harris Jr. It's located on the east side of Squirrel Den Road, north of the town of Bailey, and is currently zoned R40, which you can see is indicated by the green color on the zoning map on the right-hand side of your screen. The northern portion of this property, specifically this property line here, includes a stream feature that would be subject to a 50-foot wide riparian buffer to protect it from disturbance if and when this property is developed. The property owner, as well as the prospective property developer, Mr. Fred Privet, together have submitted this rezoning request to rezone the property from R40 to RA30CZ, Single Family Residential Conditional Zone, specifically to develop the 13-lot Harris Farms residential subdivision. Approval of the rezoning would have three substantial impacts on the subject property. First, there would be a slight increase in the potential residential density because the minimum lot size requirement would be reduced from 40,000 square feet to 30,000 square feet. Secondly, there are 9 land uses that are currently permitted for development under the current zoning that would no longer be permitted for development under the proposed new zoning. The full list of 9 is in your staff report, but probably the most relevant is double-wide manufactured homes. Currently, that property could be developed for double-wide manufactured homes, but if the requested zoning is approved, then it could only be developed with stick-built or modular homes. Double-wides would no longer be permitted. Finally, this is a conditional rezoning, so the ultimate development of the property would be tied to the proposed sketch plan that is up for approval at today's public hearing. And because it is a conditional rezoning, there's the possibility to add reasonable site-specific conditions to the approval with the consent of the applicant. If you'll turn your attention to the proposed sketch plan, this has been prepared by Williams Pierce and Associates. This is the proposed Harris Farms subdivision, and this sketch serves as the required site plan for the rezoning request. It proposes the development of 13 new residential lots. 12 of those lots would be accessed by the new public road coming off of the east side of Squirrel Den and ending in a cul-de-sac. And there is one lot down here that would have a direct driveway off of Squirrel Den Road. This has changed since the planning board. At the planning board, when they reviewed this request, it was a 15-lot residential subdivision. However, due to some lot width issues, the developer needed to reduce this. And so since the planning board has been reduced from a 15-lot subdivision to the 13-lot subdivision that you see before you. As mentioned, all of these lots must either meet or exceed the 30,000 square foot minimum lot area requirement and the 100-foot minimum lot width requirement of the proposed RA30 zoning district, and they do. The developer would be required to construct a new water line connected to the existing 4-inch water main installed in Squirrel Den Road right-of-way to serve each of these new lots. And of course, each of these new lots would also include an individual private on-site septic system. Whenever we consider a rezoning, we are bound by state law to consult and address the consistency of the request with our comprehensive land use plan. This, I believe, is the first residential rezoning we have had since we adopted the new comprehensive land use plan in November of last year. This request is consistent with the recommendations of that plan. You'll recall under the old plan, the plan would have recommended rezoning to 20,000 square foot lots because of the presence of public water in the road right-of-way. But the new plan only recommends 30,000 square foot lots, and that has certainly influenced the request that comes from the applicant, which is compliant with the plan. Number one, I want to point out that the plan designates the majority of the property as a residential agricultural area. You can see that by the green color that covers the majority of the property. There is some water protection and natural resource area designated along the boundary I pointed out earlier, which includes a stream and a stream buffer. But the stream buffer will protect the critical part of that property from disturbance during development. Number two, as I mentioned, the plan recommends a minimum allowable residential lot size of 30,000 square feet for this area, which is consistent with what's being requested. The plan recommends that rezonings that allow for greater residential density should be limited to RA districts only. RA districts prohibit the development of manufactured homes, and this request is for an RA 30 CZ district. And finally, the plan recommends the extension and utilization of public water service where it is available, and as I've already mentioned, it's available along Squirrel Den Road. We also review reasonableness and spot zoning concerns. This request may be considered reasonable and in the public interest because it would not be unreasonable spot zoning because the property already is and will continue to be zoned for residential use and development, similar to the adjacent and surrounding properties. Also approving the request, while it would permit slightly smaller minimum lot areas, it would also be more restrictive in terms of permitted land uses by prohibiting the development of manufactured homes. The Technical Review Committee considered this request on March 15th and recommended approval, subject to some suggested development conditions. The Planning Board met on March the 20th and considered this request. There were 4 members of the public that are listed in your staff report who addressed the board in opposition to the request. They cited concerns including potential increases in local traffic, property taxes, and water runoff, as well as the potential negative impacts on local agriculture, wildlife, and the current rural character of the area. Mr. Fred Privet, the prospective developer and cousin of the property owner, addressed the board at the same meeting in support of the request. And Mr. Privet is present with us this morning as the applicant to address the board during the public hearing. The planning board ultimately voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request subject to the suggested development conditions. I want to review those development conditions with you briefly. In your packet, beginning on page 15, you have a motion for approval, and then following that would be a motion for denial. This is a legislative decision, so the board is free to approve or deny based on your determination of what would be reasonable and in the public interest. At the bottom of page 16, I want to review the development conditions that have been recommended by both the TRC and the Planning Board. Number one, of course, because it's a conditional rezoning, the development would be tied to the sketch plan that's on the screen. Number two, the property may be developed in the future for the land uses that are permitted in the RA 30 zoning district. Number three, all the residential lots must be served by Nash County Public Water, which shall be extended by the developer. Number four, Nash County Emergency Services must review and approve the new road names prior to their official assignment. Number five, any significant or substantial modifications after an approval would potentially have to be re-reviewed by the Technical Review Committee, the Planning Board, or possibly this board at the discretion of the zoning administrator. And finally, number six, the amendment, if approved, would be invalid unless and until the petitioners consent in writing to all the attached development conditions. And that is a new condition that we are adding to all conditional rezonings at the recommendation of the county attorney in order to comply with the letter of the statute that enables conditional rezoning. With that, I will pause and take any questions that the board has on the staff report before we proceed to the public hearing.
Questions of Mr. Tyson at this time from a board member? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'd entertain a motion to go into public hearing on this matter.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Leggett, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Combs. Questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? We are in a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen. If there's someone here that wishes to speak for or against this conditional use rezoning, we'd ask you to come forward at this time and state your name and address for the record. Anyone here wishing to speak on this item? For or against? Seeing no movement, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
Move to close public hearing. Second.
Have a motion by Commissioner Leggett, second by Commissioner Wilkins. Questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Public hearing is now closed. The pleasure of the board. Do you have any more questions of Mr. Tyson?
I've got one more question for him. I just wanted to clarify that this proposal is consistent with the recently approved land use plan.
Correct. Because it is only a step down from 40,000 square foot lots to 30,000, and that is the only reduction in lot size that's recommended by the new plan.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Nash County Board of Commissioners adopt the statement plan of consistency and reasonableness below and approve this conditional rezoning request.
I have a motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Combs. Questions on the motion itself? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries and the property stands rezoned.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item number 8, which is another public hearing on conditional rezoning request ZZ 230302, Skylight Solar LLC. Mr. Tyson, let us know what you have here, sir.
The subject property here consists of 3 adjacent tracts of land. They total up to approximately 858 acres. All 3 are owned by Sorghum Ventures LLC. As you can see on the maps on the screen, they are located on the northwest side of Taylor's Gin Road. This is to the east of the town of Castelia, and they are zoned A1 agricultural as indicated by the light green color that colors the zoning map on the right-hand side of the screen. The property is mostly undeveloped. There is one existing but apparently uninhabited concrete block home located right along the road at 5236 Taylor's Gin Road, but otherwise undeveloped. The site is east of and immediately adjacent to the approximately 470-acre Gideon Solar LLC solar farm facility. So the subject property, the 3 parcels we're looking at today are in red here, but they are immediately adjacent and share a boundary with the property outlined in blue to the west. That is the 470-acre Gideon Solar facility. This is a facility that was approved by the board in January of 2022. It is continuing development, but has not yet begun construction. This solar farm, although it is adjacent to the site, is not officially affiliated with this request. This is a different entity that is proposing the adjacent solar farm. The site is also immediately adjacent to the existing Duke Energy Progress electrical substation site at 5870 Taylor's Gin Road. The property is in the Tarp-Hamilco River Basin, meaning that stormwater management regulations would apply to its future development. And it also includes some existing jurisdictional wetlands and riparian buffer areas that would have to remain largely undisturbed, and that will limit the amount of the subject property that can be developed for a solar farm. The property owner has authorized the prospective developer, Skylight Solar LLC, to submit this rezoning request to rezone the property from A1 to A1CZ, Agricultural Conditional Zone. This is the same procedure that was done for the adjacent Gideon Solar Farm back in January of 2022. This request is specifically for the development of an approximately 78.3 megawatt photovoltaic solar farm facility. This, again, is a conditional rezoning, so there's the opportunity to attach reasonable site-specific conditions with the consent of the applicant. What you have before you today is the proposed site plan. It depicts 3 fenced areas. The fencing is an orange color on the subject property. Those 3 fenced areas contain rows of ground-mounted solar panel arrays. Those arrays will cover approximately 460 acres of the subject property, as well as a related new electrical substation down here to the south that would provide connection to the nearby Duke Energy transmission lines. The facility would be accessible by 2 proposed entrances along Taylor's Gin Road. The site plan exceeds the county's minimum screening buffer requirements. Everywhere you see a red line here, which would be up to the northeast along these properties that are adjacent on Taylor's Gin Road. Everywhere the solar farm would be adjacent to a property that has a residence on it or immediately adjacent to the road right-of-way. The developer is proposing a 50-foot wide separation buffer. A 50-foot wide separation buffer along the road right-of-way and a 100-foot wide separation buffer along properties that are adjacent and residentially used. Both of those buffers, the 50 and the 100, will include within them a 25-foot wide area of either preserved or planted vegetative screening to hide the solar farm from the road right-of-way or from those adjacent residential properties. The project also includes a little bit of additional electrical infrastructure on the southeast side of Taylor's Gin Road. There will be a switch yard and a transmission line and some interconnection equipment. However, that equipment would fall under an existing category that we have for an electrical substation. So you'll note that that is outside the area of the rezoning because the entire solar panel array areas would be on the northwest side. So we're only looking at rezoning the properties on the northwest side, and this would fall into a more traditional electrical infrastructure equipment category. Due to the size and complexity of this type of solar farm project, as well as the significant investment that will be required, the applicant has requested that the board grant a 5-year vested right. That is something that is authorized by the North Carolina General Statutes. That 5-year vested right will provide them extra time for the approval to stay valid while they are preparing to go to construction. Our ordinance awards a 2-year vested right automatically, but the state statutes do authorize the board to extend that up to a 5-year vested right, and that was what was done for the adjacent Gideon Solar Farm to the west back in January of last year. If we turn to the future land use map of our comprehensive land use plan, the plan designates the majority of the property as residential agricultural area. As you can see from the green color, there is a little bit, again, of the water protection natural resource area, but those areas have already been identified as stream buffers or jurisdictional wetlands by the developer that will be preserved during and after construction. The board has previously determined that these photovoltaic solar farm facilities are compatible with the types of agricultural and residential land uses that are already found in and recommended for development in the future for this residential agricultural area. The request may be considered reasonable and in the public interest because it is not spot zoning. It's an expansion of the immediately adjacent A1CZ zone that was established to the right-hand side of this blue line in January of last year for Gideon Solar. The solar farm facility will provide a renewable, sustainable alternative energy source that is in the public interest. The operation of the facility should generate minimal noise and traffic, should not generate any dust, fumes, or odors. And as discussed, the solar farm facility should be screened from the view of the public road right-of-way and immediately adjacent residentially used properties by a preserved or planted vegetative screening buffer. The Technical Review Committee considered this request back on March 15th and recommended approval subject to suggested development conditions. The Planning Board met on March the 20th to consider this request. There were 2 members of the public during that meeting who addressed the board in opposition to the request. They cited concerns including soil erosion from water runoff, the potential impacts on wildlife habitats, and the natural vegetation and local agriculture. They also mentioned the use of foreign-made equipment, the safety of the materials contained within the solar panels, and concerns regarding the future cleanup of the site and disposal of the equipment. Attorney Nick Tosco with Pointer Spruill and Teddy Ivanko with NextEra Energy Resources addressed the board in support of the request on behalf of the application. They explained that Skylight Solar intends to purchase the subject property, which is different from some of our smaller solar farms, which are a lease agreement. In this particular case, the developer intends to purchase the underlying land, and also they intend to post a bond ensuring the future decommissioning and removal of the solar farm at the end of the project. That is not a minimum requirement mandated by the county ordinance, but it is part of their typical business plan for solar farm development. The Planning Board voted unanimously at that meeting to recommend approval of the request subject to the suggested conditions. In response to the questions raised at the Planning Board meeting, the applicant submitted some fact sheets that are included in your agenda today on the anticipated impact of the project on the environment, on local property values, and the plan for the eventual decommissioning of the project. In addition to that, the applicant has supplied a health and safety report on photovoltaic solar farms that was prepared by the North Carolina Clean Energy Technology Center. All of those have been included for your review this morning. This is a legislative decision. There is a motion in your packet for approval and a motion for denial, depending on what you determine to be reasonable and in the public interest. I want to review the development conditions that are suggested in the event of an approval. They begin at the bottom of page 26 of your report. The subject property would be approved for the development of the solar farm facility only. Number 2, it would be tied to the submitted application materials, the approved site plan, and all the applicable requirements of our ordinance. Number 3 cites the 25-foot wide vegetative screening buffers that are proposed along the road or along the adjacent residentially used properties. Condition number 4 outlines the additional approvals and permits that would be required after a zoning approval but prior to a construction authorization. Number 5 outlines the approval of the specific 5-year extended vested right. Number 6 notes that per our ordinance, when the solar farm facility shall be removed, it has to be removed at the expense of the landowner of record and/or such other responsible party as identified by the lease agreement within 180 days of a determination that it has been abandoned or is no longer being maintained in an operable state of good repair. And condition number 7 states that the rezoning, if approved, would remain invalid unless and until the petitioner's consent in writing to all the attached development conditions. I will pause there to take any questions on the staff report from the board prior to the public hearing.
Any questions of Mr. Tyson from board members?
Mr. Tyson?
Yes, sir.
Haven't we dealt with this property before in connection with solar farms?
We've dealt with the immediately adjacent property to the west, but not these particular 3 parcels.
Not this portion?
Correct.
But they're adjacent?
Correct.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Tyson. This time I'd entertain a motion to go into public hearing on this matter.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wilkins. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Arrington. Questions on the motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign. Motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, in the audience, we are at this time in a public hearing. The board would be pleased to hear from anyone here that wishes to speak for or against this conditional use rezoning. We ask you come forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Who wishes to speak before the board?
Let's try this for round two.
Yes, sir, Mr. Ford.
My name is Lee Robertson, and I'm currently a resident at 7641 Lee Sharon Lane, and that's in Brattleboro, just north of Red Oak. My wife and I are in the process of planning a home to potentially build off of Wildlife Road, and the property borders the proposed solar farm. And as I'm looking at the presentation now, any uninhabited land masses don't have any kind of buffer. In fact, it's not even on this northwest corner here, there is a stream and there is a wetlands, and it's not even shown on as being a buffer on this slide here. But who is going to benefit from the 78 megawatts of power? I don't know if Nash County needs that much power, so I'm assuming that most of the power will go to Wake County, which means that Sorghum Ventures, the owner, doesn't even live in Rocky Mount or Nash County. He resides in Raleigh. Skylight Solar is a subsidiary of Next Era Energy, which is a subsidiary of Next Era Resources, located in Juno Beach, Florida. So they don't have any residents in Nash County, let alone probably North Carolina. So we are planning on destroying wildlife habitat, our natural resources, the land values of the residents along this for companies and people that don't even reside in Nash County. Some of the dangers that I have researched on solar energy is that all solar panels are made with lots of lead and cadmium, and it has been well researched that the cadmium in the solar panels can be eroded by as little as rainfall, and that cadmium can leach into the soil and into the wells and the waterways of the residents of Castelia. And we all know that cadmium is a cancer-causing agent. And in addition to that, the companies, when they say they're going to, after the life of the solar panels, they decide to destroy the solar panels and get rid of them, they do not remove the underground portions. And it's stated in Skylight Solar's or whoever's Next Era Energy's website that they will specifically remove above ground portions of the solar farm. But that leaves cables and polyvinyl chlorine pipes in the ground, and we all know the dangers of polyvinyl chlorine if Ohio is still fresh in everybody's memory. Again, it'll be detrimental to land values and home values of the folks around, and there's research showing that large acreage solar farms can create a microclimate where it can increase the heat in that environment and cause hotter than normal temperatures in the surrounding area. There is one little positive about this, and that is that Skylight Solar, Next Era Energy, whatever you want to call, says they will have $15.4 million available to the Nash County public, and that's over 30 years. They mentioned going to schools. Well, when you look at $15.4 million over 30 years, and assuming that the student population in Nash County will remain the same at 14,400 students, that's $35 per student. So let that sink in. It's not going to provide much benefit at all. It's like 5 Big Macs. Or by 30 years, that might be 1 due to inflation. And again, I do want to mention that there's land that needs to be buffered that's not shown on this map right here along the northwest corner. There are wetlands and there's a creek there, and there's no buffer prepared for that in this plan. So with all that said, I'm opposing this solar farm because it's apparent that everybody involved in this process is not a Nash County resident, and it looks like they're trying to take our resources and they're trying to essentially turn Castelia into a solar farm, the whole area, because this is just one of many that are up there right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Next speaker.
Morning.
Good morning, sir.
My name is Jeff Joyner. I live at 17566 Redbud Road, Castelia. This man did his research, got pretty much the same results that I came up with. When I was at the planning board, I mentioned the same thing as far as the cadmium and the lead. Over 30 years, 15 to 30 years, the latest research shows that these break down and start to leak. You have erosion just from building it. You're going to have wash off. Me and my wife have a 50-acre farm that butts up to this land, which has tributaries and so forth. And I'm sure they would do the best they could to prevent that, but it's inevitable it's going to happen. When these panels become brittle after 30 years, they have to be disposed of. So where are they going to go? The latest research I came up with shows the cost will be 50 times more than what they originally thought. It does affect vegetation. Some of this vegetation, even if they took the panels back up, you'd never get anything to grow there for several years. Habitat, wildlife, our way of life. Some of the citizens that wanted to come today couldn't be here because of work schedules. So my hope, in the very least, is if you could table this for evening, that more residents could come. And it's a pretty big deal when you got this big of a solar farm. And Castade's already got a bunch of them. We have a sign, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when you come into Nash County, agriculture meets opportunity. To me, this is not agriculture. It can be zoned as agriculture, but this is not true agriculture. This is our way of life here. So just consider that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joyner. Next speaker. Morning, sir.
My name is Herman Robertson. I reside at 5208 Barnhill Farm Road in Brattleboro, North Carolina. Nash County resident for 72 years here. I don't need to reiterate the other two speakers' concerns. I own a piece of property on the border of that proposed solar farm, and I totally disagree with it. I wish you would see it the same way as I do, and let's not make Nash County a solar farm county. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak? For or against? Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, excuse me, and members of the board. My name is Nick Tosco, and I'm an attorney at Pointer Spruill, and I do represent Skylight Solar. Thank you for taking the time today to consider this conditional rezoning request. With me today, I do have representatives of NextEra Energy Resources, and they will be the ones that will develop the project. If the board has detailed questions about the facility, they'd be happy to answer those. In case you don't know, I wanted to tell you a little bit about NextEra. They've been a clean energy provider since the 1980s, operating wind, natural gas, solar, and other clean energy across the U.S., and they are the world's largest generator of wind and solar energy. This is not a fly-by-night company. They don't come in. They establish partnerships and try to work within the community to build a project that works. As you heard from Adam, we are asking for you to support the application to rezone 3 adjacent, mostly vacant, undeveloped parcels from the A1 to the A1CZ zoning district. And it's important to point out, I did want to note that Adam referenced this, but the project is for the rezoned area is going to be approximately 858 acres. So only 460 of that 858 acres would be the solar facility, so a little over half of the property. The rest would be maintained as wetlands, open space, and similar types of uses. So, and I did just want to also reiterate that this is not affiliated with any of the other solar projects that are in this area, including the one that's adjacent, this Gideon Solar. So just to give you a little bit of history in case you are not familiar with this project, Nextera began researching and communicating with landowners going back to 2018 and trying to work with stakeholders and property owners to figure out the best path forward for this project. They entered into 3 options to purchase, as Adam mentioned, for these parcels. And so they will be the landowner, and they will be the ones that will be responsible for everything. They will not, be behind a lease. And so they, in addition to what they've done working with the property owners and the landowners in the county, they've also been coordinating with numerous federal, state, and local agencies, the Army Corps, DEQ, and of course, the local agencies, including Adam and the Nash County Planning Department. We heard a little bit about some of the concerns, and I think one of the speakers said that there were no benefits. I would like to just briefly explain what I think some of the benefits are going to be for Nash County. First of all, it's projected to generate close to $7 million in additional revenue for Nash County residents and over 100 jobs during construction. And we heard some of the concerns, but the fact of the matter is that these projects do not negatively impact roads. They don't impact schools, water, sewer, and don't create any traffic concerns, like Adam said. And they don't create any emissions or produce excessive waste products. The location and the arrangement has been specifically tailored to make sure that there are no noise impacts. Studies have shown that these inverters that are a part of the project are the sound of a low refrigerator hum, and we have designed the project such that they're pushed into the property and away from any potential residences. As you heard from Adam also, that we heard what the planning board comments were, and we made additional revisions to the site plan. We have ensured that the buffers meet or exceed the standards of the ordinance, and we voluntarily committed to a decommissioning plan bond to be submitted, although that's not required by the ordinance, because we wanted to assure the county that there would not be a situation where Nextera was not responsible for decommissioning or removing the facility. It is consistent with your comprehensive land use plan, and it's not high density, and it doesn't have the negative impacts associated with other high intense uses. So for you all's purposes, the main consideration is your Unified Development Ordinance and the specific standards in section 11-4.72A, which Nextera has met all of those standards, and the central issue about whether or not this is in the public health, safety, or welfare, which we believe it is. So we thank you for your time and consideration. We're happy to answer any questions. We appreciate the TRC and the Planning Board's recommendation of this project. I'll now hand it over to Teddy Ivanko with Nextera, and you can ask questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tosta.
Good morning, Chairman Davis, fellow commissioners. First, I want to thank you for your time this morning. I just had a few points that I wanted to follow up with after Mr. Tosco. My goal throughout this entire process is to be transparent and a good partner in development.
Would you state your name again and address for the record?
Yes, sir. Teddy Ivanko, and I currently reside at 2417 South Wallen Drive in Palm Beach, Florida.
Thank you.
So I have 4 main points that I'd like to talk about for this project. The first one being is that this project does not contain any active farmland on the project site. So that tells me that there will be no loss to crop yield, and like you heard from Mr. Tosco and Mr. Tyson, there's no increased strain on resources or traffic while the project is in operation. The second point I would like to make is that this project is effectively screened from any position, including along Taylor's Gin Road. I brought a couple packets with me this morning for your viewing. This was at request of the Planning Board a couple weeks ago. to update our visual analysis simulation. So in front of you, you have an updated packet that shows a few known observation points adjacent to the project with what the current image looks like taken from a photograph, what the simulated image looks like, and then if you could see through all the trees and the topography, you have a yellow area that shows where the project will be. I want to highlight, as you can see, that the simulated image and the current day image, it's hard to tell any sort of difference between the two because the project is so well screened by the vegetation. What I also want to touch on is that 25-foot vegetative buffer is the minimum size that we have. And within the 100 or 50-foot setbacks, any tree clearing outside of that 25-foot buffer would only be for the purposes of shading. So I don't want to give the impression that everywhere along the project, immediately after 25 feet, the vegetation will end. That is not the case. We're not going to cut down trees for the sake of clearing trees. It's only for shading on the project. So there are many areas where that buffer is larger than the 25-foot minimum. And part of this analysis that I'm doing and taking notes from the public comments here is I'm looking for areas where the 25 feet, or if it's 50 feet at that point, where the vegetation is too sparse, and I would like to supplement that with plantings. So we're doing our analysis, but I'm open to comments or locations where either the public or other agencies feel that this is not, the 25 feet is not thick enough with natural vegetation. The third point I would like to make that I'm really excited about this project is it is directly adjacent to a high-capacity Duke Energy Progress 230 kV line, which eliminates the need for a long transmission line to connect. The transmission line proposed going adjacent to Taylorton Road is less than half a mile to connect our substation to that switchyard that Mr. Tyson discussed. My fourth point is that this layout is contiguous solar arrays. And why I see that as a benefit is we don't have sections of solar arrays or panels spaced across different roads or different parcels. It's all connected into one spot, which helps it keep centralized and easier to screen and really be at my end state of out of sight, out of mind. You heard about 460 acres approximately of the 858 of the parcels. I also wanted to bring up that of that array area, there are gaps within the panels, 10 to 20 feet, and there are preservations for wetlands and wildlife corridors and things like that. So it is not a strict impervious ground coverage over the entire development. I wanted to touch on a couple of the questions that came up. The first one being the environmental impacts. I know Mr. Tyson said he forwarded that study by North Carolina State University. All the research I've seen and all the studies that I have either done by my company and project or done by third international or national trusted agencies point to that there's not ground leaching from lead or cadmium on these panels that we are putting into service today. Over 90% of the panel is comprised of silicon, and as you can see from that study, there's some imagery in there showing the layering of polymer and glass that really encapsulate that panel to where if something does happen and it does break, there's no sort of leaching or anything that happens from rain or runoff into the soil. The second thing I wanted to talk about was the wetland buffer. I acknowledge on that northwest corner, we're following the topography there of the wetlands. We are not developing in any jurisdictional wetlands. If that is a place with the site plan where the Board of Public would like to see, where that buffer is, I'm happy to add that. And to that second point of a residential property adjacent to the project, when my team went through the database and identified all the residential properties, that's where we put that, we show the imagery of the specific 25-foot buffer and 100-foot setback. But if there's a property that we are adjacent to that is for residential use while we're going through development, I'm happy to make that change as well to be in accordance with the ordinance and be a good neighbor in that development. I'm happy to forward any more research or studies to the board or Mr. Tyson as it may help, but again, thank you for your time, and I'm here with my team. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have for the project.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You said there was no impact to agriculture here. What's been going on in these cleared fields we're looking at in these pictures?
Which cleared fields are you looking at, sir?
Well, I'm looking at Red Bud Road right here that looks like wide open spaces. What's been going on in those cleared places?
Yes, sir. That is not a parcel we have control over. That parcel is one that is adjacent to the project. So that open field, I couldn't tell you what the use is for. I believe that one to the northeast, they cleared a few years back, but I don't know what sort of development they're doing on that field. That is just a view from the road. That adjacent, or that open field is not part of our current layout.
All right. I was just wondering.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Got a couple questions.
Fred, do you have a question?
Yes.
Bruce?
Are you intending, if you said it, I didn't hear it and missed it, intend to use the entire acreage for a solar farm?
Our purchase option is for all 3 parcels, but we're only planning with our layout to develop approximately 460, so a little over half is
Which
part
is
of
about half of it.
is part of our development, yes, sir.
I thought I heard a comment concerning runoff. Runoff can be controlled.
Yes, sir. As part of
More-
our, I'm sorry.
A couple of ways. It can go into a stream, or you can develop a holding pond. And I would strongly suggest that you take a look at that. Because runoff, sometimes it's running on someone else's property, and it may create a problem for them in their use or whatever. So I would do that. I would certainly look at that one. And your buffer too, also, which I think is already stated in here, your plan about the buffer. I had a call, not on this particular one, about concern about agricultural land use. And I told the farmer that called me about that, if you want to protect, I said, because companies are buying up land, and if you want to protect agricultural production, you as farmers going to have to get because as some get old and they don't have children to take it over, they're going to sell it. And 9 out of 10 times it's going to be some company that's probably going to develop for something else. So you just need to get organized just like other interest groups organized to protect agriculture. Solar farms are classified under agriculture, but not row cropping for crop production. So take that into consideration, suggestion about the runoff.
Yes, sir.
That's my comment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir.
And to answer that, stormwater management is part of our planning process. So when we have if we get to the final site plan approval, part of that will be stormwater management runoff, because we do work with the state and federal agencies when it comes to stormwater management.
Commissioner Leggett?
I've got a couple comments and questions. First, I'd like to reiterate Commissioner Bellfield's concern about the runoff. When you clear previously wooded land like this, you do change the runoff and how water flows. Second, I'd like to ask is the materials that you're looking at putting in here, the equipment, what would you consider the useful life of that equipment? How many years would you be considering, like, this project would be in use and service? What's your plan?
Our proposed lifespan with the materials is 30 to 35 years.
Okay. And you mentioned a decommissioning plan. One of our speakers mentioned that y'all would be looking at only, if this site was decommissioned, taken offline, that y'all would be looking at only removing what's above ground. Is that true, or would you be looking at removing all of the infrastructure, underground wires, concrete, things like that?
We haven't finished our decommissioning plan yet. That's something that we're in development that we plan to send to the county with the final site plan at that stage of development. When it comes to above ground or below ground, part of our development process is analyzing what is the best and minimal impact overall for the topography and for the land. So I couldn't tell you today we haven't finalized the plan yet today for what exactly, but at a minimum, all the above ground. But whatever our plan does encompass, our surety or bond will financially cover the entire operation.
Okay. And also, I wanted to address the issue of future homes being built. Are y'all looking at putting a buffer around the entire area? And what would you do about future homes being built?
I have not seen the county's plan or future home plan. When I looked at it at the beginning, I was looking at the residential properties that are identified adjacent to the project. But like I heard this morning, there's one that is actively becoming a residential parcel that is adjacent. So it's something I'm willing to look at and open to. But it's hard for me to know what is going to be built 10, 20 years down the line.
Right. Is there a buffer around the entire area?
To some extent, yes. That we don't have a templated 25-foot vegetative buffer in the sections between Skylight Solar and where the Gideon Solar project is, where we have a templated buffer there. But when it comes to the wetlands, anywhere to the northwest, we do have a buffer off of all wetlands. While it's not prescribed in writing in the ordinance, such as a 25-foot vegetative buffer, if that is an area we would like to put in writing that we will have that buffer on those wetlands, I'm happy to do that as well.
I think that would be good. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
I think you did state you had buffers on all existing right-of-ways.
Yes, sir.
Okay, which would take care of a lot of Ms. Leggett, I think, what you're concerned about. Other questions? Mr. Harrington?
Yeah. How many homes are, let's say, what's the closest residence home from this property?
Closest resident home, I'd have to look at the site plan. I know we have measurements from all the homes to the fence line, and I believe the closest home was about 250 to 300 feet from the fence line, but I'd have to consult with the layout measurement.
But anyway, all your property is undeveloped and it's wooded area that you developed?
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions, Mr. Commissioner Harrington?
That's it.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else here wishing to speak? State your name and address, please. Good morning.
Maury Robertson, 5208 Barn Hill Farm Road, that's in Battleboro. My husband and I own a farm that's been in the family for 4 or 5 generations, and it will buffer up. One thing I'd like to point out is, just so we can understand, practical terms, 25-foot buffer, that would be like from where I'm standing, not even as far as the wall. Now, would any of you all like to live in a 25-foot buffer? Would you like your residents, your farm, to have a 25-foot buffer? I invite you to move from Naples to Castaic and live 25 feet from a solar farm.
Well, we ask that you address the board if you would.
And, I mean, any of you, would you like to live like that? Would you like to take a chance that your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren in 30 or 35 years would all of a sudden find that the water they'd been drinking was toxic because of what's in the ground? And in 35 years, are any of you or me going to be left to hold this company accountable or the owner accountable for removing not only what's above the ground, but what's been put in the ground? Those are just some realities. Castaic has what is considered the highest point in Nash County. So we're looking at our rivers and streams flowing back to Nashville, to Rocky Mount, to other areas in the county. Are you willing to put a solar panel farm, bad misnomer, are you willing to put that onus on your grandchildren, my grandchildren? Think about 25-foot buffer. That's nothing. I just want you to think about that. The power is in your hands, but you need to listen to the people that live here, not somebody from Florida who can hire lawyers to say whatever they want to say. Listen to the people that live in Nash County, that own property here. We pay taxes every day. And please take into consideration also that there are many people who would speak, but they're hardworking farmers and people who can't be here during the day. And maybe consider having some sort of a meeting in the evenings when they could be here. And I appreciate your time. It's been lengthy today. A lot of information has been given. I'm not sure that all of it is accurate. So I would ask each of you to do your due diligence and check behind these folks. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wish to speak that hasn't spoken yet?
Mr. Chairman, I've already spoken. I'd like to show a farm on the map.
Let me see if anyone wishes to speak, then I'll allow you to do that. Anyone else wish to speak? Come on up and show it for you, farm is. Adam, the buffers itself, I think the 25-foot is the planted buffer, and the buffer is sometimes considerably wider than that. Is that correct?
The buffer along the road is 50 foot wide.
Right.
And within that 50 feet is 25 feet. That would be vegetation that's either existing and preserved or planted. The buffer adjacent to a residentially used property is 100 feet wide. And again, within that 100 feet, you would have at least 25 feet that is planted or preserved vegetation.
Correct.
And as the applicant noted, the 25 feet is a minimum. There would be areas where that would be wider.
Right.
But,
thank you.
I think maybe if we could switch to the document camera. And I think it'll be easier for you to show the property here. I believe we're focused on the northwest corner of the development. And I would point out that this kind of speckled pattern in here indicates jurisdictional wetlands that cannot be disturbed, and so you'll know that the solar panels are behind or away from that buffer. But sir, you can come up here and indicate your property.
I'm trying to see where.
Take a look at it on his monitor right there.
I need to flip it over. I need to flip it over.
Oh, you're not in the northwest corner?
He's in the northeast corner. Is it right here?
What's your name?
Donald Robin Joyner.
Joyner.
Yeah, I believe it's right here.
That says Robert L. Cooper.
Yeah, that was my father-in-law.
Okay.
We inherited
I
it.
gotcha. So let me put a mark on that. And so that property with the asterisk would be the subject property. And then the fence line would be off to the west, right here.
So, the landowners didn't get a fact sheet. So, I mean, we've done our own research, but I noticed everybody else got a fact sheet other than the landowners that it's going to affect. There's truly no plan of how they're going to dispose of this in the end. And if you really do the research, take the time to do the research, that's still in development for us how to get rid of it. It ends up in this, if somebody's waste, this waste is going to end up in somebody's landfill, whether it be ours, shipped off, or whatever. And then what's that kind of problem is that going to cause? What is the cost of that? I understand production tax and all that, and I don't pretend to know the real numbers and all, but $7 million sounds like a lot to be generating off a solar farm. So I just asked you to consider that, but I just kind of wanted to show you where my land kind of butts up to that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Belfield?
I didn't quite understand what he was saying there. Did you?
I did.
Okay.
He primarily wanted you to see where his property was located at.
Okay.
And then he questioned whether anyone knew what the ultimate disposal of the items used in the solar farm would be at the end of its useful life.
But we have in our ordinance, if a solar farm is inactive, who's responsible for dismantling it?
We do, and it indicates that the landowner is in our ordinance, and in this case, the applicant will be the landowner. But one step beyond that, first time I think we've had this offered is they've offered to supply a bond to the county to make sure that's done just in case maybe this entity didn't exist at the time.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Right.
He was saying about this disposal.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. We have that already taken care of.
We've got it taken care of. On this one, we've got an additional insurance policy in addition to that. Yes, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in the public hearing before I close it out?
Was there a residential home on the property that we just finished discussing?
Did Mr. Cooper have a residential home?
On that particular property, right there.
It was not identified as an adjacent property that has a residential home. Maybe he can confirm that for us. Is there an existing home on your property right now?
Yes, sir, the farm with pasture land.
Gotcha.
And it has a tributary that comes out that way in there.
Answer's no.
So no existing home on that property?
There's plans to do that, though.
Sure. All right, there's no other one wishing to speak. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Arrington. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Combs and Mr. Belfield. Commissioner Belfield, any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign. Public hearing is now closed. What questions would you have of staff on this item? Commissioner Leggett.
Mr. Tyson, how does this 858-acre zoning compared to the size of other solar farms in our county?
Well, you can see on the aerial photo, it's about double the size of the one adjacent to it, but it does not approach being the largest in the county. There are at least two larger solar farms down near Fraser Road in the southwestern part of Nash County that exceed 1,000 acres easily. And so it's larger than your average solar farm in Nash County, but it is not approaching one of the two largest that we have.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Tyson, the ratio of being panels on about half of it, is that the norm? I'm thinking the norm was probably a higher percentage of use.
I think it probably is low for this particular project, but we have to keep in mind that that the applicant has done a good job on the front side of this project of identifying the riparian buffers and wetlands that they'll have to stay out of, whereas another applicant may leave that identification process for further in the development cycle. And so I think this applicant has a very good grasp of how much of the property is really usable, and that limits them.
Sure, understand. Any other questions? Pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Harrington.
All things considered, that developer has met and exceeded a number of the requirements in our ordinance. And at this time, I move that Nash County Board of Commissioners adopt a statement of plan, consistency, and reasonableness, and approve the conditional rezoning request as presented.
Have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Harrington. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Belfield. Questions on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, that also includes the list of development conditions as well.
Motion maker?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Second? Yes, sir. Everything else in order with the motion,
Yes, sir.
All right. Have a motion and a second. Any other questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Tyson.
Thank you.
I have a request for a short break at this time. We'll pause for about 10 minutes, and then we'll start back on item number 9, which is the monthly tax report. To order at this time, we will be starting on item number 9, which is the monthly tax report. I'll call on Doris Sumner at this time to make that report. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. At this time, as you stated, I'd like to present the monthly tax report. As you all know, this report is designed to keep the board current on activities in the tax collector's office. The report is for your information only and does not require approval. However, it is recommended that you accept the report so that it will be noted in the minutes. And of course, if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer those. I'd just like to say our collections are coming along, and we're working really hard, working with the county attorney as well on starting up some foreclosures also.
I just strolling through it a little bit.
Yes, sir.
It looks like you're tracking very well with the previous year.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions on the tax report? Seeing none, to be noted in the record. Madam Clerk?
Thank you.
Next item is the item 10, which is tax refunds. Do you have any of those?
We do not have any refunds for this month.
Okay, no refunds?
Yes, sir.
Well, you got a short session then. Thank you,
I
ma'am.
do, but I would like to just remind the board that next month we will hold our first Board of E&R meeting.
Correct.
And of course, you know, this is so that the board can hear, upon request, any and all taxpayers who own or control taxable property assessed for taxation in Nash County. With respect to valuation of that property, they have an opportunity to come before the board. We do ask that if anyone has appeals, that they contact the tax office first before they come to the board.
Right. I've had one call about it, and that's exactly what I told him to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is item 11, a resolution in support of emergency 911 telecommunicators. Call on Tony Cameron at this time to make this presentation. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. We are here seeking support from the county commissioners for the realignment of 911 telecommunicators. Currently, the Office of Management and Budget classifies our 911 telecommunicators as a clerical or administrative support. So, and we believe that it would be better categorized in another category. We would like the commissioners to consider supporting several other counties, 18 counties, along with state government, with the reclassification, with the resolution. We believe it's most appropriate classification in the protective services occupation. And this category basically identifies the vital role that the telecommunicators play in emergency services every day. So with your approval, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Bryant to come up to read the resolution, get a clear understanding about it.
Would you want questions before the resolution is read or after?
Whatever the board pleasures.
We can wait till after.
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So before you, in your packet, you should have received a copy of the resolution that I'd like to read to you. Resolution for supporting the reclassification of Nash County 911 telecommunicators. Whereas in September of 2021, U.S. Representatives Norma J. Torres and Brian Fitzpatrick announced that their 911 Saves Act passed the House as part of the fiscal year 2022 National Defense Authorization Act. The 911 Saves Act is bipartisan legislation to reclassify 911 telecommunicators from office and administrative support to protective services occupations in the Office of Management and Budget Standards Occupational Classification Catalog. Whereas the Office of Management and Budget currently classifies 911 dispatchers as clerical workers, the same category as secretaries, office clerks, and taxi cab dispatchers. Whereas 911 telecommunicators are the first line of response during an emergency, and they deserve to be classified in a way that recognizes their work is equal with the work of other public servants classified as first responders. Whereas the 911 Saves Act more accurately reflects the specialized training and skills that are required for 911 telecommunicators. Whereas the 911 Saves Act is supported by the Association of Public Communication Officers, APCO, National Emergency Number Association, NENA, and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Whereas 911 Telecommunicators are working with elected officials to reintroduce this legislation with the next Congress, and local support will assist this effort. Whereas the Nash County Commissioners are in support of such legislative change. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Nash County Board of Commissioners are in support of bipartisan legislation to reclassify 911 Telecommunicators from office administrative support to protective services occupation in the Office of Management and Budget Standard Occupational Classification Catalog, adopted April 3rd, 2023.
Thank you. Any questioners have any commissioners on this item? Any commissioners have any questions on this item before I ask them?
You say 18 counties has already approved
Yes,
this?
yes, sir. 18 counties, they already approved this resolution along with the Senate with a statement and the House. So this is something that's well on its way. We believe our communicators should be recognized in a proper category. They're part of the first responders. They are first responders, and they are vital. As you all would well know, 911 hadn't been here forever. Back in the day, we called rescue squad, or we called the police department. Well, these telecommunicators come to the table with certifications and training, and it begins the moment that phone's ringing. So we just think this is the most appropriate category to put these communicators in, and it recognizes their service to community. And just to add, this is no money. This is just recognition and a title.
That was my next question.
Okay. This is just the right thing to do.
All right.
And Mr. Chairman, I just had a comment. That was my next question as well. Does that put them in a different pay category, scale, or anything?
No, ma'am, it's simply a title, and it's just the support of this board to recognize these communicators and the hard work that they do in the service to community.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just on that comment, what is the median average salary for the classification they're in, and what's the median average salary for the protective class?
I don't have that answer for you, but I'll get it for you.
Okay, I know what the answer is.
Okay.
It's much higher.
Yes, it is.
Well, I think it's about $9,000 higher, roughly. I don't know the exact number right in my head. Well, what's the benefit for the telecommunicators by just changing this classification?
I say
I didn't know anybody ever referred to them as protective class. I don't refer to police officers as protective class or Homeland Security. I just refer to them as their title.
This title is recognized by the Office of Management and Budget with the federal government, and as far as the title, I think it's just the way we've always done it, or that's the thought process there, and that was my guess looking from the outside in. To me, these men and women that answer their phone, they go through emergency medical training, they go through CPR, they go through law enforcement.
I have no doubt. I don't question their ability and their skills. I just wonder, what is the real benefit? What are you trying to get to here?
Just simple recognition for the hard work that they do as a first responder.
Title instead of clerical telecommunicator.
Yes, sir.
Others? Again, I've got a couple of questions, but I want to make sure nobody thinks I'm questioning what they do, how good they are, or anything else.
Yes, sir.
But it's very unusual for us as the Board of Commissioners to get asked to take a position on federal legislation.
Yes, sir.
And I personally think it's a dangerous process to start. A lot of what they do up there is pretty controversial. Our board, for the most part, works together extremely well. And if you start taking positions on federal items, I don't know if we'd be able to sustain that. But we've generally practiced the thought process that unless we're going to have some effect on the outcome of something at the federal legislation and even the state, we routinely will stay pretty neutral on it, particularly at the federal legislation. And the resolution itself is resolution supporting the reclassification of Nash County's 911 telecommunicators, which I don't think that's what we're doing. I think it's a resolution of support to a federal legislation. So I question the title just a little bit of the resolution itself, but more importantly, we will be being asked to go into an area that we routinely choose not to do. And that's no reflection on what this particular one is about whatsoever. It's just the process itself. But you say there's 18 counties that have?
Yes, sir.
That leaves 82 that has not?
Yes, sir.
Is all of that in progress, or I guess I would say, have any of them chosen not to do it, to your knowledge?
I believe, Commissioner, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is a very new process, is starting, the movement starting, and is something that we just think that, you know, getting on board with it is the right thing to do with our people. If the resolution is not, the terms are not in line with the board's wishes, we can make adjustments on that, as far as the lingo. But I can't answer for the other 82.
Okay, understand that. I thought you might have some tally on it.
No, sir. I only have, I have the Senate statements and the House statements that have been presented, and I have the list of the 18 counties.
Right.
And it's 2 cities, I believe it's Greensboro and Durham.
Will it, manager, affect what they're titled in our own play plan?
No.
And what is that exact title in our play plan?
I would have to go look it up. I believe they're telecommunicators.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Just to add, the history has been that this has been something they've been trying to pass at the federal level for a number of years, but for whatever reason, it stalls on one side or the other. So the thought has been here at the local level is, why don't we try to gain support locally, then as a state recognize that, and then kind of bring that back to the federal level to show that there's support starting at the local all the way up to the federal government. It's the move that they're trying to do now.
So it has been going on in several sessions and hasn't gotten out yet?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is part of my concern of us getting involved in federal legislation, quite frankly.
Where are the state legislatures at on this?
Like you said, both houses had approved.
Yeah, it's a senatorial statement that's been out honoring the communicators, and the representative statement also honoring them. Well, and support. And I have them with me if you'd like to see them.
So you said you had a Senate and a House?
Yes, sir.
Statement support. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'll take your word for it. I don't need to see. Any other questions? Stacy, do you see my concern with the title itself? And could it be titled differently from that, maybe?
I think we can certainly do that. We can also go back and do some more research to bring to the board maybe what the stalls have been at the federal level, so that we can share those reasons with you to better help you make your decision.
Tony, is this have a time sensitivity to it?
No, sir. No, sir, it does not.
Would it at all offend you if we work on that title a little bit?
No, not a one bit.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we table this item too.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor to table the item, I need to say to a time specific or until brought back up. And probably need to do it until we have sufficient data rather than a time specific.
The next meeting be?
That's fine. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I would prefer when we have sufficient data.
Okay, I think we would just let it be put back on the agenda when she has the data pulled together, if that's okay, Commissioner?
That's fine.
Okay, all right. You understand that motion? Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second. Any questions on the motion? And I'm just going to say on behalf of the board, for you telecommunicators that are here, we just need to get it right when we pass it. It has nothing in the world to do with the intent of the resolution itself. So please understand and take it that way. All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign?
No.
Did anybody say no other than Mr. Belfield? Motion carries.
So, Mr. Chairman, so I'm clear your interest is in data, what's stalling it, and also the verbiage.
The verbiage of it, particularly the title itself.
Yes, sir.
And get that to the manager, and
Yes, sir.
she'll get it back on the agenda. And
And
we'll try
also
to
maybe
do it
provide
quick.
the state information. You said the state had
Yeah,
moved this through those.
provide us with those, what they did
I'll
as well,
attach them.
and maybe what counties have
And
approved.
maybe whoever the sponsors of that action was.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I add just one thing?
Absolutely, sir.
This Sunday, April the 9th, begins National Public Safety Telecommunicator Week, and that'll run through next Sunday, or Sunday week, through April the 15th. So, again, we've got some of our staff here, just to kind of recognize them. And again, thank you for your comments for supporting them, but I just wanted to bring y'all's attention to National Telecommunicator Week next week. So thank you.
Absolutely glad you did that. I'd like to see the board give those in attendance a round of applause for the work they do and appreciation for what you do for Nash County. Good, thank you. Are there any planned activities, Mr. Fisher, for that?
Yes, sir. We've got some activities planned. We've got a meal catered for them Thursday night as well. So we've got some fun activities planned for them. So we appreciate the community's support as well on that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And it'll be published that it is their week next week.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item number 12, which is Community Development Block Grant. I'll call on Ms. McGee at this time.
Hello.
Good morning.
Nash County, as you know, was previously awarded a $900,000 Community Development Block Grant for coronavirus, or CDBG CV, in funding from the state of North Carolina. And CDBG CV funds can be only used within the boundaries of low to moderate income municipalities and census block groups. To use the funds, staff has explored a wide variety of options and worked with the help of quite a few local partners, including the eligible municipalities, nonprofits, and a committee. Our consultant, which is the Wooten Company, and we have had guidance from the State Department of Commerce Division of Rural Economic Development. Over time, in this project, there have been quite a few changes, and we had originally planned to provide free Wi-Fi zones, and we are still doing that. We have expanded that to include 8 in Nash County. We had originally planned to provide hand wash stations, which we have expanded to include 8 within Nash County. We had originally planned for a local nonprofit to provide subsistence payments to low to moderate income households. $4,806.25 was used within Nash County in this particular program. Then we planned for a local nonprofit to distribute essentials home health care kits to low to moderate income households, but that nonprofit is no longer in a position to provide that service in those required areas within the required time frame. So now, following much consideration and involvement, we plan to submit a request for scope of services revision to reallocate unused funds to fund 4 new activities. And those include providing personal protective equipment, such as gloves, masks, gowns, and cavi wipes, to Nash County Fire Departments, Castalia, Middlesex, and Sharpsburg. And number 2, purchase a supply dispenser called a UCAPIT for the PPE and related supplies to be located at the Spring Hope EMS station. Number 3, to provide 6 computers, laptops, and accessories, plus a community garden, the supplies for it, to the Sharpsburg Senior Center. And number 4, provide 20 computers, laptops, and accessories to the Spring Hope, Whitakers, and Middlesex libraries. So in order to proceed, we need to hold a public hearing for those changes, for the request for scope of services revision. And there's a copy of the ad that ran in the Rocky Mount Telegram in your packet. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Questions of Mr. Gee on this item?
Mr. Chairman, I have a few.
Go ahead.
In the public notice, it says that funds were given to a local food pantry and, were allocated to the food pantry service. And so you're saying you're taking those funds from the food pantry to give to these 4 other agencies, is that right?
Yes, they asked to terminate the agreement because they were not in a position at that time to fulfill the requirements.
The food pantry was the one that asked, that you were speaking of,
Yes.
that asked to, okay.
Yes.
And there are no other food pantries that
They
benefit
have
from
to
this?
be located in certain areas and able to provide the service in certain areas, and so, no. We have worked extensively to try to use this $900,000, and this is the result, and we had a committee to look at what some options might be, and so we have a certain need to go ahead and expend the funds as well, and there was a lot of paperwork that would be required in this program for people to be able to obtain the food supplies. So that didn't seem to be the best option, and that nonprofit asked out of that agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
What are the identified service areas?
We have a map, but it includes low to moderate income municipalities and census blocks that's really splotches across Nash County, but it does include the areas of Castelia, Middlesex, and Sharpsburg for municipalities, and Spring Hope, and then some random other census blocks, and we can get you a copy of that map if you'd like it. We can get that to all of y'all.
I guess my other question is, there has been a lot of protective equipment distributed, and is there a need for more of that? I see that.
According to these organizations, there is a need, and we worked with them, we reached out to them to ask, and they do need these supplies.
I guess, like my concern, like I said, we know the importance of distributing food, and yes, it would be great if we had an organization that could carry that objective out.
Other questions? Commissioner Aaron, I think what we only had one food bank in one of these areas as that would meet the criteria of location, and that one, after it got into it, I think because it saw the massive amount of paperwork they had to keep up with, chose not to do it. Of course, they were having other things going on at the time too, if I remember correctly, was taking a lot of their attention.
These areas are outside of Rocky Mount because that is an entitlement city, so none of the areas in Rocky Mount could we use this in, which really kind of limited us in terms of the food distribution. But also we were limited to those census blocks and municipalities. So,
I guess that's why the volunteer fire departments are the 3 that are noted.
correct.
Other questions?
This federal grant,
It is federal that passes through the state.
Right.
And we apply for it in competition with other places.
Okay.
this is the money, if I'm not mistaken, Commissioner Harrington, that we worked on numerous things, particularly up at Whitaker's, and kept running them up the ladder, and they wouldn't qualify. Some things at the library about doors and hardware and things of that nature.
That's right.
Stuff
We
that
had
work on that
requested,
You involved in significantly, but they kept turning down because it was so much of a tunnel of what would qualify to be using these funds for.
Do you know if Rocky Mount received these same type funds?
I do not know if they got the exact type of funds. I know they got a lot of funds, like we have, and different categories, but I don't know if they got CDBG coronavirus. They wouldn't be eligible to apply to the state for them because they're an entitlement community. So unless it came straight from HUD, I don't believe they would have gotten this exact type.
Other questions? Thank you, ma'am. Entertaining a motion to go into public hearing at this time.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wilkins. There a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Leggett. Questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a public hearing to consider any request or more so questions on this item that we have before us here today on these federal funds. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on anything about these items? If you would come forward and state your name and address for the record. Seeing no movement, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Outlaw. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Harrington. Questions on that motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. No actions needed. We will go on to item number 13, which is,
You do need action, do you?
what's that?
You don't need any action on this?
Just to hold the public hearing.
Just to hold the public hearing.
Okay.
Item number 13 is a spring/summer intern, and I'll turn it over to Ms. McGee to tell us about Josh at this time.
Okay. I've asked him to join me up here, and he's going to address you at the end of my comments. Nash County has hosted a number of interns, fine interns in the past, and this year is no exception. We are hosting interns benefits us by providing local talent that can support current staff, and the intern will usually assist his or her mentor in meeting the daily demands of county government and will work on short-term projects, and this experience will help the intern gain valuable work experience and provide material for his or her resume. So we're excited to host an intern in the spring and summer of 2023. Joshua, or Josh Revore, is a high school senior who is scheduled to graduate in May and then attend Patrick Henry College beginning in the fall. And he came to us by way of recommendation from Commissioner Wayne Outlaw, in whose district he resides. He began his internship with the Grants and Intergovernmental Relations Department on March 1st and is scheduled to work part-time about 20 hours a week until July 21st. During his internship, he will primarily assist our department by digitizing paper files, and he already is an integral part of preserving our housing rehabilitation program records for 2 housing programs, the ESFR and the URP. He will be helping staff to digitize other program records, and he will maintain compliance with record retention policies of our various grants and programs as he does that. And he also assists us in preparing for meetings, reviews and edits, program documents, and at times will assist with client relations. I don't think he's done that yet. So we're very pleased to have this bright young scholar working with Nash County, and I'd like to give Josh an opportunity to address the board as well.
Sure. Good morning, sir.
My name is Joshua Revore. I've grown up in rural Nash County all my life, and I'm very thankful and grateful for this opportunity, and I look forward for the months to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Josh, do you have anyone with you today that you would like to introduce, sir?
Yes, sir. My mom's out here with me today.
Would you ask her to stand up and introduce her for us?
Yes, sir. So that's my mom. That's Miss Jackie Revore.
Okay.
And she was born and raised in this area, too.
Been your mom all your life?
Yes, sir.
Pleased to have you all here this morning. And thank you for what you're doing for us. Would you mind? Let's give him a hand, right. Could you tell us just a little bit about Patrick Henry, where you're going to college at?
Yes, sir. So it is a private Christian college in Purcellville, Virginia. It specializes in government and majors like that, and it accepts no government funding or anything like that. So it's very unique, but I'm looking forward to going there in the fall.
I think your time is up talking because your alarm is going off like that.
And what was that bad to the bone that was playing?
I have to say, Tim, that was actually my alarm.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that, Josh.
Well,
your mother jumped up and turned it off.
Well, I'll say welcome, and I'm sure you'll be a great asset in helping the staff. And Pastor, did the young lady that was intern last year, did she graduate from college?
Yes, she graduated.
She did?
Public health. Kathy Nicholson was her name.
Do you know where she is now by chance?
I don't know for sure. She was trying to stay in the Guilford County area at the time, but I did touch base with her. I don't know where she is, but she did graduate. She was with us for 3 years. Maybe we'll get Josh for 3 years.
Yeah. Was it 3? I thought it was 2.
She was with us for 3 years.
It was 3.
Yep, she was.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Josh, for being here.
Thank you.
Next item is item number 14, an engineering service contract amendment for Central Nash Water and Sewer District. Call on Mr. Boone at this time to make this presentation. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I have to say I was a little envious of Josh there. I thought he had a woke-up song. I might have to start to incorporate that in my presentation.
That's right.
Never got a chance to do that while I was playing sports. So the first item I have before you is a contract amendment with the Wooten Company. You may recall I presented to the board before one of the projects that we are pursuing with the American Rescue Plan Act funds that the county received is the development of some groundwater supply wells in the Central Nash Water Sewer District. And this contract amendment will basically take us into the next phase of work on that project. So we've gone back out, we've engaged with the state, we've re-permitted 3 of the 4 well sites that were identified back when that property was first being developed. And the next stage of work will involve developing a contract or a project that we will bid and a contract that we will award for a well driller to come in, re-drill a couple of those wells, and then complete the water quality testing and drawdown testing that's needed, again, in order for us to move forward. So that is my request to you today, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of Mr. Boone on this item? Which funds are we using to do this with?
ARPA.
ARPA, okay, that's what I thought. All right, if there's no questions, I call for a motion to approve the request.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Commissioner Belfield, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Outlaw. Questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign. Motion carries. We'll move on to item number 15, detention facility addition and renovation change order.
Yes, sir. Next item I have for you is related to the renovation and expansion project at the Nash County Detention Facility. This is change order 6 on the project, and as outlined in the cover memo, basically there's 6 items that this change order addresses. A couple of those are related to some electrical work on the project. We did receive a credit for the proposed 2-way conversion of Drake Street, which the Nashville Town Board requested that we forego on the project, and then also some design revisions on the rear loading dock at the rear of the facility that resulted in a change order of $30,000. So net increase on the contract is $17,049.57. which if approved would take us to a revised contract amount of $18,308,128.88. And I do believe this change order received a favorable recommendation from our Major Misty Strickland. So I want to add that in there. I don't know if that'll help or not. But.
It won't hurt.
Okay, all right. Well, good. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Questions of Mr. Boone? Is the last item 042, that area where we're moving the fence out for the loading dock, or is it something to do with the loading dock itself?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. The last item, exterior loading dock ramp revisions, is that the item where we're moving the fence outward some and getting more enclosed area, or is this something
No,
different?
this is actually the ramp that begins at the loading dock and extends north and then turns east on the rear of the facility that's needed for ADA compliance.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? Entertain a motion for approval.
Make a motion, we approve the change order.
Commissioner Combs made a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Leggett. Questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries as well.
Thanks, sir.
Next item, budget amendments. We have 6, and I'll call on Donna Wood at this time.
Good afternoon.
Good evening, ma'am.
So I have the following budget amendments are presented for the board's consideration for fiscal year 22-23. I do have 6 budget amendments on the agenda. I would like to go ahead and say budget amendment number 4, I'd like for you to disregard. That was input in error. I actually had that on the agenda in March, so we can disregard that one. So I'll go ahead and start with budget amendment number 1. This is a fund balance appropriation. This amendment's presented to transfer funds to the County Capital Reserve Fund to support the courthouse masonry repair project. These funds are available due to the ARPA grant. Transferred funds for support of general fund services is $275,000. The next item is with the Sheriff's Office. This amendment's presented to appropriate donated funds to the Sheriff's Community Support Fund to provide $500 Sheriff's Office scholarship funds and $500 from the Allison family to support a public service scholarship to include law enforcement, EMS, fire, or nursing. It's $5,100 and no county funds are required. The next item is with Parks and Recreation. This budget amendment makes funds available that have already been collected in sponsorship revenue for spring sports, including baseball, softball, t-ball, flag football, and soccer. It's $17,207. As I indicated, number 4, I'd like for you to disregard. Item number 5, that's with senior services. This amendment's presented to transfer grant funding for between projects in order to utilize all of the available funding for fiscal year 23. Fund balance appropriation of $1,111 is requested due to the county required match for home-delivered meal grant funding. So it's moving more money into home-delivered meals out of the Faith Home Care due to availability of use of funds. The next item and the last item on the budget amendment agenda is for the Nash County Public Schools. This relates to lottery funds for public school building repair and renovations. In order to assist the county governments in meeting their public school building repair and renovation needs, North Carolina General Assembly passed legislation as part of Local Session 2021-180 that established a new source of revenue to be used specifically for repair and renovation projects. The source of the funding is from the North Carolina Education Lottery. The fund is administered by the Department of Public Instruction. The funding is to be used to provide funds to counties for repair and renovation projects for local school administration units within a county. Repair and renovation projects must be pre-approved by DPI. And the funding draws for the projects require approval from the Chair of the Board of Education and the Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. There's this additional funds are available for Nash County to draw down to support repair and renovation projects approved by DPI. The additional funding available for these projects is $172,816. We've already drawn down or requested $300,000 in budget amendments, so this will make the request for $472,816 for that funding source with pre-approved projects.
Any questions of Donna on either one of these budget amendments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Outlaw. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wilkins, or Leggett, excuse me, and Mr. Bellfield. Any questions on that motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign. Budget amendment stand approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next item is item number 17, which is board appointments. I'll call on Assistant County Manager Scott Rogers at this time.
Thank you, sir. I have 3 items for your consideration today. The first one being a request by the Nash Community College Board of Trustees Chairman, as well as their president, requesting the reappointment of Sam Dickens to their board. The second item is in regards to our Consolidated Human Services Board. We have actually 9 members that have terms expiring. They include Ms. Dorothy Battle, Dr. Doris Knight Thorne, Yvonne Moore, Danny Tyson, Dr. Mike Johnson, Commissioner Dan Cohn, Dr. Chandra Tucker, Mickey League, and Dr. Mark Abel. All of these positions are eligible, willing, and recommended for reappointment. The third item I have for you is the Board of Adjustments. We have 2 members with expiring terms, regular member Kenneth Mullen, and alternate number 1 is Mr. Oscar Bruce. Chief Mullen has declined an additional term due to other obligations, but Mr. Bruce is eligible, willing, and recommended for reappointment. If Mr. Bruce is reappointed, he would obviously take the regular member position vacated by Mr. Mullen, and we would need a recommendation to serve as alternate number 3.
Any questions on either of those?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Sure.
The Consolidated Human Services Board, those that are expiring, when do they actually expire? Is it individual? Are there individual dates?
No, they're all the same date in April,
Which is
end of this month.
end of this month?
Yes.
They're stacked up like that because they're tied to the date that we formed the Human Services Board. And everybody that was on either board at that time got to start over their terms and number of terms again.
I just really would like, because I've only been here a year and a half, I just really would like more time to look at the board members, how long they have been there, but whatever the pleasure of the board is.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, go ahead, Mark. Go ahead. I just want to mention that I'm looking at a candidate to replace Mr. Mullen.
Right.
And I'll have that recommendation at the May meeting.
And I'm going to take action on these 3 individually when we get to that point. Mr. Bellfield? Okay.
No, I was just going to offer a motion.
Okay. All right, well, let's move back up to the first item, which is the reappointment of Sam Dickens.
You want to do them individually?
I want to do them individually, yes, sir.
Okay.
Which we normally do.
Okay.
The Nash Community College Board, we have recommendation to reappoint Sam Dickens. We did look in that a little bit, and actually we have determined that those board members do not have a number of terms that they can serve, and they are 4-year terms, and so that's where we are with that, and it's covered in the general statute, how they were set up. And of course, we remember school board appoints a third, commissioners appoint a third, and the governor appoints a third. I was of the thinking that they had some number of term limits, but apparently they do not. But with that said, entertain a motion to reappoint Sam Dickens to the board at Nash County Community College. Moved by Mr. Bellfield. Is there a second that motion?
I'd second that Motion.
Okay, there's a second by Commissioner Outlaw. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. We're now on the Consolidated Human Services Board members. We heard one comment from Commissioner Wilkins. Pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion, we approve the reappointment of these people.
I have a motion to reappoint the 9 people shown. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Belfield, Commissioner Belfield. Any questions on those motions? Harrison,
yes.
You were going to say something, I think.
Well, I have questions on whether we want to appoint all of these people back on the board that we have, we are still in the investigation of our DSS department, and I guess I want to take a look at these people a little closer.
Okay.
Except Dan Collins.
All right. We've heard that comment. Any other comment before I call a vote? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign?
Oppose.
Oppose.
All right. The motion carries 5-2. Thank you all. The next one is the Board of Adjustments, and you heard the discussion on that. By just appointing this Oscar Bruce, he automatically goes on the board, or do we need to do it somewhat differently?
I think he automatically moves up.
He would automatically move by ascension because of Mr. Mullins' absence.
Okay. All right. I entertain a motion this time to approve Oscar Bruce for
So moved.
reappointment.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Belfield. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Leggett. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries, and we heard Commissioner Outlaw state that he would be looking for a replacement for that open seat as alternate number 3, I guess.
Yes, sir, and I've passed an application to an individual that I've reached out to, which is in my district.
Okay. All right, great. Anything else you have, Mr. Rogers?
No, sir.
All right. Next item on the agenda is 17A. The item we added, it is a resolution on surplus real property on Beale Street in Rocky Mount. I'll turn it over to the county attorney, Mr. Durham, at this time.
I apologize for adding this to the agenda at the last minute, but we just received notice from the city about this on Thursday or Friday. This arises out of a lawsuit between an owner and a bank regarding ownership of the house and lot located at 406 Beale Street, Rocky Mount. They argued about who owned it because the owner attempted to convey it to the bank. The bank didn't want it, filed a lawsuit, included Nash County and the city of Rocky Mount in the lawsuit. The lawsuit was settled by the city and the county agreeing to accept title to the property, and we have done that, and the city and the county own the property, and Mr. Peter Varney, former assistant manager, I guess, and former interim city manager, has agreed to handle the sale of this property by sealed bid, and to do that, we need to declare it as surplus property and approve the sale by sealed bid. This resolution is basically copied Mr. Varney's resolution he prepared for the city. The minimum acceptable bid will be $30,000, and the city and the county, plus the city assessment, adds up to approximately $9,500. So hopefully we'll make a little bit of money to pay our costs involved in this matter. I would ask that the board approve this resolution.
Questions of Mr. Durham?
Let's see. I just want to ask you, I'm not quite, I couldn't quite orient myself as to where they, I know you got the number there on Beale Street. Is it vacant?
No, sir, there's a house located on the property. And Mr. Varney has inspected it, indicated there is some water damage, but he thinks it's in pretty good condition otherwise.
and anticipates that it'll sell for more than is owed in taxes.
Other questions, Commissioner?
No, that's the only one.
Who sued who? I didn't quite.
Pardon?
Who filed suit against who in this matter?
Wells Fargo is trustee, filed the lawsuit against the owner, alleging that his deed that he attempted to convey the property to Wells Fargo was invalid, and they didn't accept it and didn't want it.
Okay.
Of course, he'd been in bankruptcy. It gets complicated.
Okay, all right. What I need to do is get a motion to, let me find my notes here. What action actually need to take?
We need to approve this resolution.
Approve the resolution, that's all we need to do.
Yes.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve the resolution at this time.
Move for approval.
Moved by Commissioner Leggett, there, second. Second. Second by Commissioner Combs. Questions on the motion? All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries as well.
Thank
you. Next item is item number 18. Any commissioner have any comments they'd like to make on items not on the agenda at this time?
Mr. Chairman, just mentioned that our next mid-month will be in May. Of course, we'll be dealing with budgets, possibly have some meetings scheduled with that, but the next scheduled mid-month for inside and outside presentations will be in May. And I think we've identified what the May outside could potentially be, and I've discussed that with the manager. And we will still need someone for June. And if you have any recommendations for inside for May, please share them with me or the manager.
Questions? Seeing none, other comments from commissioners at this time? I'll very quickly give the housing report, since I know y'all expected to hear from me every month. So you didn't need to look at me like that, fam. But there were 37 new homes permits applied for in Nash County during the month of March. They were about 24 different builders, and as I say, every month I'm surprised at the number of builders that we do have coming into Nash County building homes. So that's still a pretty good pace. And the commercial permits amounted to $6.5 million. No other comments? I'll turn it over to the manager for the manager report.
Thank you. I'll be brief. For the co-responder program for the month of March, there were 10 DSS referrals and 3 sheriff's office referrals. I just want to give the board a reminder of this Thursday morning. The Farm Bureau is hosting their legislative breakfast here in Nashville. At their location at 255 North East Point Avenue, and that's at 8:30 Thursday morning. Also a reminder that this Friday is a holiday and county offices will be closed, and that we are continuing to work through the budget process, and I'll stay in touch with the board on that, and should we need to schedule a work session, we may do that moving forward. And that's all I have.
All right, any questions on the manager report? All right, with that said, we have a closed session we have scheduled, and I'll call for a motion to go into closed session. It will be for the purpose of economic development matters, which will be second on the agenda, and the matter of attorney-client privileges, which we will take up first on the agenda. So I'd entertain a motion to go into closed session for those items at this time.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wilkins. There a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Leggett. Questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? We stand a short recess, and then we'll adjourn in closed session, and we will, of course, close out the meeting in open session. I'm not sure whether there'll be any action taken that we will report at that time or not. Thank you.